During an undetermined period of time, blood kept flowing from the mountains of the DUAN border. It looked like there were blood lakes running through the mountains. During an undetermined period of time, blood kept flowing from the mountains of the DUAN border. It looked like there were blood lakes running through the mountains. Lin Feng and Meng Qing returned onto the main road. Cold chi surrounded their bodies. They had killed all the soldiers who were hiding in the mountain. Back then, Lu Lan had been in DUAN city protecting the valley. Lin Feng would have never thought that one day, he would personally use his sword in the DUAN border to kill Shuyu soldiers. The Celestial Sword Battalion had arrived in the valley of the DUAN border. There were many corpses in front of them. They were all wearing the armor of Shuyu. The road was being blocked. We killed them all, said Lin Feng to the Chi Xie unit, sounding cold and detached. He had noticed that they were surprised by the scene. Now, come with me, let's head out at our maximum speed. Then Lin Feng and Meng Qing rushed through the air as their horse moved at an incredible speed. The people behind them remained silent and started galloping, closely following Lin Feng. After the DUAN border, there was DUAN city. At that moment, DUAN city looked apocalyptic. There was only ash filling the air. The entire city was destroyed by the fire. Above the gigantic city gate, there were some Shuyu soldiers and they opened the gate. Lin Feng hadn't said anything. He had immediately moved towards the city gate and entered the city. Nobody tried to stop him either. The Chi Xie unit galloped towards the city, but after they entered the city, the gate started closing itself. In front of Lin Feng, there were some soldiers who were slowly moving towards him. A sharp and majestic chi was being released from their bodies. They were all on horses while staring at Lin Feng. It seemed like they had been waiting for Lin Feng to come back. From their horsebacks, they grabbed their bows and raised them into the air. Lin Feng and Meng Qing could feel a deadly chi invading the atmosphere and oppressing them. "Stop, or we will shoot," shouted an ice-cold voice. But Lin Feng completely ignored them and continued to move forward on his horse. The one who had just shouted was surprised. He raised his hand with his bow, narrowed his eyes, and a devilish ice-cold expression appeared on his face. "Die!" He lowered his hand, and pulled the bowstring. At that moment, an arrow whistled through the air, moving straight towards Lin Feng and Meng Qing. Boom! The arrow hit the horse with a piercing blow. That arrow surprisingly had such brutal strength. Amongst these people, none of them were weak, they had all broken through to a high Ling Chi layer. They were all elite soldiers. The Chi Xie horse collapsed, dead from the first arrow. The first arrow wasn't intended for Lin Feng but for the horse. After that first arrow, he put another one in his bow, but this one was for Lin Feng. This one was supposed to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng and Meng Qing jumped into the air together and floated above the ground. They then immediately threw themselves at the crowd, ignoring the arrows. "Freeze," whispered Meng Qing in her snow-white clothes. Ice spread through the atmosphere. At that moment, all the arrows that were moving towards her immediately froze and emitted small cracking sounds. They were frozen in place. Besides, Lin Feng was at Meng Qing's side and a resplendent purple cloud emerged from his back. That purple cloud transformed into a silhouette. It was an insane 100-meter-high silhouette. It was in the shape of the purple dragon. That illusion surprisingly was the gigantic purple dragon. It was unceasingly flying higher and higher. It then looked at the crowd from above. That terrifying dragon made the facial expressions of the Shuyu soldiers change drastically. They were all looking at the purple dragon in the air. They started shaking and their hearts started pounding. Their hearts were being overcome with extreme fear. That illusion was Lin Feng's spirit after it had swallowed the entire purple lake filled with dragon blood. Even though Lin Feng's spirit had, after that, swallowed Meng Qing's ice chi, his spirit still hadn't changed. It was still the extremely powerful purple spirit. Concerning the monstrous dragon illusion, amusingly, it was extremely similar to the purple dragon image which the cultivator was riding. The purple liquid of the lake was the blood of the purple dragon. Lin Feng's snake and the dragon from the forbidden area were in perfect harmony, roar. The gigantic dragon illusion roared and started to attack. An endless purple lake of blood gushed from the dragon's mouth. Immediately after, the lake melted everything in its path like acid, including the arrows. Blotting out the sky, the purple lake immediately moved to block the path of the retreating Shuayu soldiers. Immediately after, endless fear invaded their hearts and faces. Their cold killing intent had already disappeared. How could that be possible? How could Lin Feng have become so strong? They received the information that Lin Feng had broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer. All of these cultivators had broken through to the 7th Ling Qi layer and were supposed to be able to kill Lin Feng. If Lin Feng came back alive, Duanren City was supposed to be the place where he would be buried, but Lin Feng had become so strong, everybody was dumbstruck. Their facial expressions indicated that they regretted everything. Killing Lin Feng wasn't a duty that they could fulfill. The purple lake was rushing through the sky and blotted out the sun, it then immediately crashed down onto the Shuayu soldiers. Immediately after, their bodies started to slowly melt as if they had come into contact with acid. In a flash, 100 cultivators had all been melted into a puddle. Melt. Being able to make things melt was definitely a monstrous ability. Originally, the blood and saliva of the dragon could melt even a powerful cultivator to nothing but bones, because Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi had inherited a blood spirit. Only their clothes melted when coming into contact with the dragon blood. After that, the purple liquid penetrated into their bodies, altering their original spirits. It had given them additional strength. Besides, when Lin Feng's snake spirit drank all the liquid of the purple lake, it had given Lin Feng's spirit the same powers as the purple dragon. When the Celestial Sword Battalion saw Lin Feng, who looked like a god, they were absolutely dumbstruck. Their heartbeats accelerated. Strong, Lin Feng had become much stronger. All of them had survived the war, they had gained lots of experience on the battlefield and had all become much stronger, but Lin Feng had become terrifying. There were larger groups of soldiers riding their horses in their direction, coming to kill Lin Feng, but, when they saw that sight, they had all stopped. They were looking at the dragon in the air, and under Lin Feng's feet was a gigantic purple lake which seemed to be under his control, and it was moving straight towards them. While the lake moved towards these soldiers, Lin Feng slowly turned around and looked at another large group rushing towards him. They were obviously Shuayu soldiers, and Lin Feng knew that they were all here to kill him. When they saw Lin Feng's expression, their hearts started to race. Coldness invaded their hearts, which sent a shiver down their spines. "We have received a mission to kill you, but you can leave," said one soldier to Lin Feng. Immediately after, they turned around to leave. If they want to kill, they kill, if they are too weak, they leave. "How ridiculous," said Lin Feng coldly. They had all received orders, but since their lives were in danger, they disobeyed the orders and left. What kind of discipline was that? "Meng Qing, sorry to bother you, please confiscate all these horses for us," said Lin Feng while turning to look at Meng Qing. Their horse was killed by an arrow. It was a bit inconvenient for him to attack because he always melted the people and their horses at the same time. "All right," said Meng Qing while nodding. She moved in the air and released some ice chi, making the hearts of these Shuayu soldiers pound. How cold! Apart from Lin Feng, there was another strong cultivator, a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. In other words, even if Lin Feng wasn't this strong, they would all still die. Wanting to kill Lin Feng under such circumstances sounded like a joke. They were all terrified. They had received orders and had to bear the consequences of their actions. Ice. Meng Qing raised her hand. Ice emerged. The crowd was shaking. Immediately after, the ice spread, it moved forward and spread through the atmosphere. Everybody was frozen like a statue. Immediately after, they collapsed from their horsebacks and died. "Get on the horses, hurry," said Lin Feng calmly. He recalled his spirit back into his body and ran, immediately after jumping on a horse. Meng Qing also jumped on the horse. Lin Feng, what's going on? Asked DUAN Xinyi when she saw Lin Feng's actions. Some people want us dead, they don't want us going back to the Imperial City, said Lin Feng while looking at DUAN Xinyi. What about me? Do they want to kill me too? Yes, said Lin Feng while nodding. DUAN Xinyi's heart was pounding. They even wanted to kill the princess. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have died, the princess disappeared, even though we won the war. In the end, they want to sentence Lu Zhanglan to death, because even though we won the war, it was still a tragic victory. Besides, we haven't managed to protect the princess who was kidnapped by MOU. Therefore, they will be able to sentence him to death. They also want to kill me, I cannot go back to the Imperial City. But if you appear in the Imperial City, they will be unable to sentence me to death. When DUAN Xinyi heard Lin Feng's words, her heart started pounding and she felt very cold. Because they wanted to sentence Lu Zhanglan to death, they also wanted to kill the princess. Could it be as easy as that? Or maybe that they just didn't only want to kill Lu Zhanglan, they had also sacrificed her. The princess perfectly understood who was at the origin of all of this. What DUAN Xinyi didn't understand was why she was kidnapped. Besides, why did Xueyu and Mo Yu seem to be working together? If it had really originated from the person she thought, why did they have to kidnap her? Why didn't they just kill her on the spot? The person she was thinking about was her brother, the crown prince, DUAN Wu Dao. He was extremely aggressive, brutal and obeyed no principles and lived with no morals. DUAN Wuya, the second prince, and her were very close, but she wasn't close to the crown prince at all. Therefore, because she had disobeyed DUAN Wu Dao, she had to die. Outside of the Imperial City, the scene looked like a seething cauldron of hatred. It was just as lively and crowded inside as before. At that moment, many people were moving towards the gate which separated the exterior and the interior of the Imperial City. Outside of the Imperial City, the scene looked like a seething cauldron of hatred. It was just as lively and crowded inside as before. At that moment, many people were moving towards the gate which separated the exterior and the interior of the Imperial City. At that moment outside of the Imperial City, behind the moat surrounding the city, a thick and dense deadly chi filled the atmosphere and enveloped the entire area. The people and horses behind the river were all wearing the same armor. All the horses were Chi Xie horses. They were surrounding the Imperial City. At that moment, the troops had surprisingly encircled the Imperial City. There were several tens of thousands of soldiers. As far as the eyes could see, there were soldiers. It was a vast and boundless sea of soldiers who were all releasing an extremely strong chi. A group of people was approaching the Imperial City and saw this army of soldiers. All sorts of comments were spreading through the crowd. They are Chi Xie troops. I wouldn't have thought that the strong armored cavalry would encircle the city, but when facing the Imperial City of billions, a few tens of thousands is nothing, it's a mere joke. They will not be able to do anything. Some people noticed that the troops, who were surrounding the Imperial City, were all wearing red armor. This armor was the symbol of the border troops, the Chi Xie troops, Lu Zhanglan's troops. That is the impermanence of life. Could it be that Lu Zhanglan the divine arrow will be executed in front of everybody, said someone while sighing. The fact that the Xueyu country wanted to kill Lu Zhang wasn't a secret anymore. It was said that Lu Zhanglan hadn't been able to protect the country against the army of MOU and that he also had a bad influence, creating chaos amongst the troops. It was also said that he had wanted to prevent DUAN Tianlang's troops from engaging the enemy and thus gave an opportunity for MOU to strike and kill hundreds of thousands of troops. Besides, the princess had been kidnapped by MOU and nobody knew if she was dead or alive, only Lin Feng rushed to save her. However, the truth was that Lu Zhanglan went with Lin Feng's plan. They massacred hundreds of thousands from the MOU army by making them enter Duanren city and burning them. That was an excellent plan. Lin Feng was considered to be dead. He traveled over a huge distance within the MOU country, and had relied on his own strength to kill the people who had kidnapped the princess. At that moment, he and the princess were missing, they were probably dead, or possibly in a critical situation. During that war, the nickname, the Divine Arrow, had lost its significance while Lin Feng had probably met his death. What a pity, he was a strong and powerful young man, he was probably already dead at that moment. The crowd looked at the sky, the sunlight was dazzling to the eyes. There were a few more hours to wait before Lu Zhanglan's execution. At that moment, the Imperial city gate was firmly closed, nobody could enter the city, and they were all there because they wanted to witness Lu Zhanglan's execution. At that moment, the troops got agitated. Immediately after, the crowd saw them jump onto their horsebacks and grabbed the bows from their backs. It's an armed rebellion. For Lu Zhanglan's sake, the Chi Xie troops surprisingly want to attack the Imperial city. The crowd was astonished. Such a small number of troops wanted to attack the Imperial city. They would certainly die if those troops attacked. The guards of the Imperial city wouldn't just watch without reacting. A few tens of thousands of soldiers attacking, that was just suicide, nothing more. It would lead to nothing good. As expected, a high-ranking soldier saw these troops move and laughed coldly. That high-ranking soldier was called Mengu Feng, he was an officer and had an illustrious reputation. He perfectly understood what he had to do when facing a rebellion. He could easily dispose of them, besides, he would be able to let his son distinguish himself in action and settle this problem himself. On Mengu Feng's side, there was a young man. That young man was wearing armor. He looked majestic and domineering. He was extraordinarily handsome. If Lin Feng had been there, he would certainly have recognized him, Meng Chong. The one whose cultivation had been crippled by Lin Feng in the past, he was Meng Gu Feng's son. Meng Chong, I will let you give the order, what do you think? Meng Gu Feng was smiling, which made Meng Chong happy. Meng Gu Feng was enabling his son to distinguish himself in action, which would allow him to move up in rank much quicker. He could only be happy about this. All right, said Meng Chong while smiling. He then moved to the edge, still standing above the Imperial city gate, and raised his hand. An incredible number of Shueyu guards raised their bows ready to shoot at the army outside. While standing there, Meng Chong felt powerful, he could decide everything and could even wipe out a small army with a single command. Lin Feng, what a pity that you are already dead, otherwise I would order you to be killed. Meng Chong felt pride once again invade his heart. He felt truly powerful. Lin Feng had crippled his cultivation and humiliated him, but at that moment, he had all the power, Meng Chong could order him to be killed. He couldn't practice cultivation anymore, but it didn't matter, he just had to raise his hand and let the army fight for him. Deadly qi spread above the gate of the Imperial city. The soldiers outside the city gate felt resigned to meet their end here. They clearly understood that, if they fought, they would die here. This battle is for nothing else but justice, shouted Ren Qingquang, standing at the front of the troops while looking up at the people above the city gate. They had fought and lost troops for their country, Shueyu, but how was Shueyu treating them? How was that fair? Justice, does it even exist? Shouted the troops furiously. The ground was shaking and their hearts were shaking along with it. These people were going to sacrifice themselves for the sake of justice. Meng Chong and his father, above the city gate, were smiling coldly. Justice is strength and influence is our justice. How could real justice exist in this world, said Meng Chong while smiling evilly. After Lin Feng crippled Meng Chong's cultivation, Meng Chong's heart had grown even more evil. Brothers, this is our last battle, we are all here to fight together, officers and soldiers. We shall have no regrets. Ren Qingquang, on his horse, looked frivolous. At that moment, even though he was going to die, he stuck to his principles. The sound of arrows entering bows filled the air and deadly energy spread through the atmosphere. Ready. Meng Chong, from the top of the city wall, raised his hand to inform the troops to aim. The evil smile on his face was getting even more exaggerated. Right after that, he slowly moved to hide himself from any of the fighting. Ren Qingquang had also raised his hand outside the walls, a gentle breeze floated in the air making his hair flutter in the wind. At that moment, that frivolous man wasn't wearing his helmet. His lips were firm, his muscles were tense. Slowly, he just had to move his hand and the death bell would sound. The sound of horses spread across the horizon but nobody paid attention to the sound. The whole crowd was only looking at the armies inside and outside of the Imperial city. Stop! Ren Qingquang lowered his hand, the troops were ready to fire their bows at any time. The sound of galloping horses filled the air and the ground started to shake. The sound spread like waves across the armies. They were galloping at full speed towards the city. The sound led to everybody stopping what they were doing. "Stop, officer, it's me," shouted Lin Feng. It looked like his horse was flying through the air. The entire army divided into two and cleared a path while looking at the silhouettes that had just arrived. When Ren Qingquang heard this voice, he was stupefied. He narrowed his eyes, it was Lin Feng's voice. "Everybody, stop," said Ren Qingquang. All the troops were stupefied. Why were they stopping their attack? Who was that? Of course that Ren Qingquang wanted them to stop. If they attacked, they would be considered as armed rebels, and the guards on the city wall would have a reason to kill them. But if they didn't attack at all and that the Shuiyu troops attacked them first, they would have a reason to strike back. Initially, he was resigned to die but Lin Feng had arrived before he attacked the city. Lin Feng was thought to be dead and Lu Zhanglan was a criminal. Only Lin Feng could make the situation change at that moment. Ren Qingquang turned around, looked at Lin Feng and the others in the distance, and smiled. His heart was beating very fast. Lin Feng. When the troops heard Ren Qingquang's words, they were all stupefied. The Shuiyu country had played a decisive role in making Lin Feng into a hero. Lin Feng was a true hero in their hearts. Lin Feng had obtained a lieutenant status with the Celestial Sword Battalion for killing the blackguards of Mou. With his strength, he had managed to change the tide of the war. At that moment, Lin Feng was appearing again. Lin Feng. On the city wall, Meng Chong also saw that silhouette. He suddenly looked hideous and evil. The sound of the galloping horses was approaching. On the top of the city gate, the troops didn't shoot their arrows and slowly put their bows down while looking at the silhouettes who were arriving. The sound of the galloping horses was approaching. On the top of the city gate, the troops didn't shoot their arrows and slowly put their bows down while looking at the silhouettes who were arriving. "Ren Qingquang," shouted Lin Feng. He then jumped off the horse and glanced at the troops. "Everybody, don't attack," said Lin Feng. He obviously understood that if they attacked, there would be no way back. If they attacked the Imperial city, they would be considered as rebels and would inevitably be executed. Those who worked behind the curtains didn't care about the lives of all these soldiers, all they cared about were their own personal interests. "Lin Feng, quickly. Lu Zhanglan doesn't have much time left," said Ren Qingquang looking anxious. Lin Feng slightly nodded. He had precisely hurried because of that reason. He had been galloping all night rushing over to the Imperial city. He knew that he couldn't afford to be slow. Lin Feng looked at the people on the top of the city wall and shouted, "Lin Feng is returning to the Imperial city, open the gate." Lin Feng knew how Shuiyu wanted to dispose of him. On the one hand, they wanted to kill him, but on the other hand, they needed him to die at the border without witnesses. At that moment, at the very periphery of the Imperial city, the whole crowd was watching the scene unfold. If they killed him, they would be forced to show their real intentions. As expected, when the troops heard Lin Feng's name, they were all startled. They slowly lowered their bows, which made Meng Chong furious. An ice-cold expression appeared on his face. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. "Lin Feng," whispered Meng Chong. He then said with a cold tone, Lin Feng was kidnapped by Mo Yu. If he was here today, it is probably because he has become a rebel and is now working with them. He cannot enter the Imperial city. Besides, there are these rebels as well. Surprisingly, they dare to surround the Imperial city, getting ready to attack us with their arrows. We must kill them. Get ready to attack. Huh? Lin Feng frowned. Attack? Rebels? How shameless. Lin Feng wasn't the only one who was surprised. The troops on the top of the city gate were also surprised, including Meng Gufeng, but orders had to be obeyed, thus the troops raised their bows again, getting ready to fire. Would you dare? At that moment, DUAN Xie was also beside Lin Feng on a horse. The crowd was astonished. It was the princess, Her Highness. Meng Chong was also astonished, his lips were shaking. Meng Chong used to hope he could marry the princess someday, but then Lin Feng crippled his cultivation. He had become a piece of trash and would never be able to marry DUAN Xie. Besides, he understood why the troops outside the city gate wanted to fight. When he thought about that, a hideous expression appeared on his face. Fire! Shouted Meng Chong while waving his hand. He looked extremely cruel. When Meng Chong finished talking, Meng Gufeng, who was behind Meng Chong, went pale. Don't shoot! Shouted Meng Gufeng furiously. Even though he wanted to kill Princess DUAN Xie and Lin Feng, at that moment, they had already returned safely to the Imperial city, they couldn't brazenly kill them anymore. That would cause a great deal of trouble. If Meng Chong killed Lin Feng and DUAN Xie, that would have made some people of the Imperial family happy and some others unhappy. Lin Feng wouldn't be too much of an issue, but the Emperor's daughter? Who would bear the responsibility for killing her? These thoughts were logical and were common sense, but Meng Chong's heart was filled with hatred and jealousy, which is why he wanted to attack. Pish! Pish! A few arrows whistled through the air. Lin Feng's facial expression was ice-cold. He jumped up in the air, his hand transformed into a sword, and he immediately cut the arrows down. You want to kill the princess? How audacious! These rebels must die, said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He immediately rushed towards the city gate at incredible speed. At the same time, Ren Qingquang and Meng Qing were also rushing towards the city gate. Pish! Lin Feng's hand pierced through the atmosphere. Immediately those who had shot their arrows were killed. They hadn't even had time to react. The soldiers who hadn't shot when they had heard Meng Gufeng were shocked. Lin Feng and the others had easily landed on the gate tower. A moment ago, you're the one who gave the order to shoot, you wanted to kill the princess, said Lin Feng in an ice-cold tone to Meng Chong. This guy again. When Meng Chong saw Lin Feng's facial expression, he started shaking. He had thought that if he saw Lin Feng again, he would prestigiously be able to order the troops to kill him, but at that moment, Lin Feng had easily appeared before him. One glance had been enough to destroy his enthusiasm. The only feeling left in his heart was dread. He was really scared of Lin Feng. The last time in the lovesick forest, Lin Feng had been merciless and crippled his cultivation, not letting him escape. He was slowly moving back. Lin Feng's eyes surprisingly sufficed to scare him into a retreat. Meng Gufeng took a step forwards and looked at the young man in front of him. It was the first time that he met Lin Feng, but many people knew about Lin Feng. Meng Gufeng obviously knew that Lin Feng had crippled his son's cultivation, making him a piece of trash. Meng Chong didn't do it on purpose, he didn't know that the princess was there. I will personally make him apologize to the princess. Meng Gufeng was protecting his son. He hated Lin Feng. He needed to restore peace and remove himself from this event. Unintentionally. He didn't know. Lin Feng was smiling coldly. A moment ago, the princess was still shouting from her horseback. Everybody saw that with their own eyes, but Meng Chong still gave the order to shoot, attempting to murder the princess. Meng Chong must die. Meng Chong didn't see the princess. Meng Gufeng's cheeks were burning. Lin Feng didn't have time to talk nonsense, he moved forwards while releasing his killing intent. How could he not kill Meng Chong? On the top of the gate, some silhouettes flickered, they all moved in front of Meng Chong. They only saw Lin Feng smile coldly, who then said, Meng Chong wants to kill the princess, he has been sentenced to death. Those who want to protect him are his accomplices and must die. I, Lin Feng, am the princess' personal guard, my job is to protect her. I will kill anyone who threatens her life, no matter who it is, said Lin Feng aggressively. He would kill anyone who attacked the princess, no matter what their status. The crowd clearly heard what Lin Feng had said. What a frivolous young man. Anyone who would threaten the princess would be killed. Try if you dare, said Meng Feng, whose face turned pale. No matter what Meng Chong did, he was his son, was within his territory and his control. Lin Feng was only the princess' personal guard, how could he not get furious after being ignored? When I say that I will kill, I kill. No matter who is in my way, said Lin Feng, sounding extremely domineering. He then took a step and an insane purple hurricane emerged in the atmosphere. A silhouette flickered and moved straight towards Lin Feng to attack him. Lin Feng just raised his hand at an incredible speed and his head had already pierced through that person's heart. The soldiers, when they saw that, started shaking in fear. Nobody dared to risk their lives in front of that purple hurricane. In a flash, purple tentacles appeared from the silhouette, its deadly strength started to move forward. Everybody was pushed back, including Meng Feng. The purple cloud contained a corrosive power too. When people touched it, they felt like if they stayed in contact with it, they would melt. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered and rushed towards Meng Chong. Lin Feng was as fast as lightning, therefore, nobody had time to react. Lin Feng grabbed Meng Chong by the neck using only one hand and then directly moved to the edge of the city gate. Meng Chong's body was hanging over the edge, Lin Feng just had to let go and Meng Chong would fall to his death. At that moment, Meng Chong's face looked deathly pale, there wasn't the slightest degree of color in his face, only fear. Lin Feng, don't you dare. Meng Feng had also turned deathly pale and furiously shouted these words, but he only saw that a smile had appeared on Lin Feng's face. Chi Xie troops, hear me, shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, the army outside in front of the gate of the Imperial city all said in unison, Roger. Their voices spread through the atmosphere. At that moment, Lin Feng looked like a great commander, majestic and imposing, everybody obeyed him. He could light the fire within the hearts of his soldiers. These soldiers were, once again, feeling full of vitality. Prepare your arrows, shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, all the troops out of the Imperial city raised their bows. Both sides had their bows raised. Meng Chong gave the order to kill the princess, this is a capital offense, he must be killed, shouted Lin Feng furiously. At that moment, he let go of Meng Chong, whose body slowly fell from the top of the gate. Thousands of arrows pierced through the air. Meng Chong gave a horrible shriek and his life was put to an end. Suddenly, a red liquid started flowing down the city walls. All these arrows had pierced through his body, which pinned against the city wall. His corpse was hanging from the city walls by thousands of arrows. At that moment, everybody was speechless. How ruthless and powerful. That is how Lin Feng had gained such an illustrious reputation, it seemed like he was at the apex of his power. Meng Chong's body had been pinned onto the city wall by thousands of arrows. The crowd was dumbstruck. Meng Chong's body had been pinned onto the city wall by thousands of arrows. The crowd was dumbstruck. The ones above the city wall, even though they couldn't see it, could imagine what happened. They had all seen the cloud of arrows a moment before. Besides, the soldiers outside of the Imperial city were punishing him because he had tried to kill the princess. The reason was absolutely valid, so nobody said anything. After all, Meng Chong had given the order to kill the princess, everyone witnessed that. Meng Feng was shaking, his eyes were wide open, he was dumbstruck. Meng Chong, shouted Meng Gufeng extremely loudly. He then moved towards the edge of the gate and looked down. In a flash, his face turned red. That was his son, pinned onto the city wall with so many arrows, his little boy. Arg, Lin Feng, shouted Meng Gufeng furiously. He turned around and looked at In Feng with killing intent. You killed my son. Meng Gufeng sounded like he couldn't believe it and was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Please open the gate, the princess and I are in a hurry, said Lin Feng sounding indifferent. He looked particularly calm. Open the gate, said Meng Gufeng with a hideous grin on his face. He then said evilly, Lin Feng, you broke into the Imperial city, killed my son in spite of my higher military rank, and have no respect for the hierarchy of Shuiyu. Huh? Lin Feng was surprised, but smiled coldly immediately after. Meng Gufeng was trying to accuse Lin Feng. What an old fox, even though he was furious and enraged, he still remained sober-headed and declared Lin Feng's faults, which would make it much easier to attack Lin Feng after. Officer Meng Chong tried to kill the princess, everybody saw it. He had to be killed for his own actions. Everybody thinks that what I did was the right thing to do. Besides, I will say it once more, officer, the princess and I have to handle important matters and are in a hurry, so open the gate and let us into the Imperial city. Lin Feng's voice was filled with coldness, his words were sharp and poignant. Handle important matters? You think that you can save Lu Tsanglan, said Meng Gufeng while staring at Lin Feng and smiling evilly. He then added 3 words, in your dreams. Boom. Meng Gufeng had just finished his sentence when an ice-cold deadly energy emerged from Lin Feng's body. Meng Gufeng was surprised and said, What are you doing? Lin Feng remained silent, his silhouette flickered and his hand turned into a sharp sword which pierced through the atmosphere. Meng Gufeng let out a horrible shriek. Meng Gufeng had tried to block Lin Feng's attack with his forearms, however Lin Feng proceeded to cut off his arms with his attack. That attack astonished the crowd once again. Meng Gufeng's troops, a moment before, had wanted to attack Lin Feng but Ren Qingquang and Meng Qing were there, preventing them from moving forward. They could only calmly watch the scene. Meng Chong wanted to kill the princess, I had to protect the princess and kill Meng Chong, which is why Meng Gufeng has a personal grudge with me. Besides, he continues to refuse the princess entry into the Imperial city and doesn't respect the hierarchy of the Shuiyu country. I, Lin Feng, will kill anyone who represents a threat to the security of the princess. Lin Feng was standing there with his hair was fluttering in the wind, his voice was resonating across the horizon. People's hearts were pounding. Not only had Lin Feng killed Meng Chong but he also wanted to kill Meng Gufeng. He would kill anyone in his way. When he finished talking, Lin Feng took a step and punched Meng Gufeng. Immediately after, Meng Gufeng's face turned deathly pale, blood started gushing from his mouth, but he was still evilly staring at Lin Feng. Meng Gufeng had also broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, just like Lin Feng, but Lin Feng knew about earth fusion, which made him much quicker. Meng Gufeng, a moment before, had been too negligent and his arms had been cut off. You are the only person responsible for the path you chose. There was an incredible sword energy which emerged from Lin Feng's hand and immediately penetrated into Meng Gufeng's body and then crushed his vital organs. With a flip of his hand Lin Feng sent Meng Gufeng flying over the edge of the city walls. The troops outside of the Imperial city released their arrows which whistled through the air and Officer Meng Gufeng joined his son, pinned to the city wall, lifeless. Lin Feng punished them both as criminals. In the world of cultivation, strength was the only thing that mattered, strength was justice. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the troops. Finally, he saw someone who had the armor of an officer. Are you the non-commissioned officer? Coldly asked Lin Feng. That person's heart was pounding. He had personally witnessed Meng Chong and Meng Gufeng's deaths. They had suffered a cruel fate. It was like the widespread rumors about the crown prince, whoever dared to contradict him, died. Indeed, said that person while nodding nervously. The princess and I need to go into the Imperial City, we have things to do, quickly open the gate, said Lin Feng calmly. That person was stupefied and remained silent. I will give you 5 seconds to think carefully about your next actions. If you don't let the princess in, you are committing an offense against the Shuiyu Imperial clan, said Lin Feng in a cold tone. He then immediately started counting, 1. 2. Open the gate. The non-commissioned officer's facial expression was rigid. How could he even give Lin Feng time to start the countdown? That guy had killed Meng Chong and his father. Lin Feng wouldn't hesitate to kill him too. No matter how the situation would be, the most important thing was to survive, the future problems had to be ignored. Open the gate, said the soldiers repeating the order. A rumbling noise spread through the atmosphere, the gigantic bronze gate slowly opened itself. Officer Ren, you and the troops, escort the princess into the Imperial City and ensure her security, said Lin Feng sounding cold and detached. Ren Qingquang nodded and said, all right. Immediately, Ren Qingquang jumped in the air and landed back onto his horse's back. He shouted, let's escort the princess into the Imperial City and ensure her safety. The troops, who covered a wide and vast area, all started galloping towards the Imperial City. The crowd was speechless. Ensuring the protection of the princess was clearly an excuse to allow the troops' entry into the Imperial City. But the princess didn't say anything. Lin Feng was controlling the entire situation, who would dare say anything? The noise of the horses galloping on the ground was unceasing. Lin Feng waited for all the troops to enter the Imperial City and then, Meng Qing and he entered as well. Hanging on the Imperial City walls were 2 corpses pinned with many arrows. The sight was, as before, shocking for anyone who saw it. Lin Feng was an outstanding young man whose heart was burning with boldness. He had managed to reverse the course of the events once again. He was so bold that he had even killed Meng Chong and Officer Meng without even blinking. He had ruthlessly killed them. Of course, in order to be bold, one also had to have the appropriate strength. Lin Feng could easily defeat Officer Meng Gu Feng, who had broken through to the 8th Chi layer. He was extremely strong. The crowd had seen how monstrously strong he was. If he didn't die, he would one day become as monstrous as the 8 high officials of Shuiyu. Besides, he would soon be even stronger, even more monstrous, than the high officials at the bottom of the rankings. In the Imperial City, there was an extremely vast square made of bluestone. In the Imperial City, there was an extremely vast square made of bluestone. It was situated in a lively district of the Imperial City. The flow of people heading in that direction was huge. In the middle of that square, there was a bright red flight of stairs made from metal which gave a dazzling light. That flight of stairs led up to a white stage. On that stage, there was a huge metallic pillar which had a cross symbol at the top. Chains were hanging from that cross. There were 2 extremely sharp hooks. The view was shocking. The purpose of these 2 hooks was to skewer the arms of a person attached to the cross. That stage was the death sentence stage and was used to kill those who had an illustrious social status but had angered the imperial family. Thus, everybody could witness the execution. After killing the criminal, the corpse would be hung from the cross by skewering his arms with the hooks. The body would then be hung there for weeks as a warning to everyone else. It let everyone know what the punishment was for angering the imperial family. At that moment, there was an ocean of people around the death sentence stage. They completely filled the huge square. However, those directly surrounding the death sentence stage were all Shuiyu soldiers. No one could get close to the stage. I really would never have thought that General Lu Zhanglan, the Divine Arrow, who was so majestic, so illustrious, would end up here today. In the crowd, some people were sighing. They were looking at the silhouette on the stage. It was precisely Lu Zhanglan. At that moment, Lu Zhanglan's body was tied up. Even though he was considered a criminal and was going to be killed, he looked neither humble nor arrogant. Lu Zhanglan had no regrets. he was innocent. In front of the crowd, two beautiful eyes were watching Lu Zhanglan on the stage. Glistening teardrops were flowing down a set of bright red cheeks. Father, you have sacrificed your youth for Shuiyu and even devoted your entire life for it, and this is how they express their gratitude. That beautiful person was Lu Fei. She looked more mature and more beautiful than back in the days of the Yunhai sect, but at that moment, she was feeling lonely, desperate and hopeless. Her heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces. Fei, remember what your father told you, stay safe, live on. You will be able to avenge him only if you're alive. Next to Lu Fei was a middle-aged man. He looked calm but his heart felt painful as well, especially when he saw DUAN Tianlang. He wished he could cut out his organs and bathe in his blood. Everything happened because of DUAN Tianlang, including the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, but he was blaming Lu Zhanglan for all these things. He was blaming Lu Zhanglan for the kidnapping of the princess as well. It was a terrible fate for a hero like Lu Zhanglan. When he went to the Imperial city, he thought that the Chi Xie cavalry would never be able to enter the Imperial city. At that moment, Chi Xie saw a young and handsome man leading them. A smile appeared on his face. Fei, it's Lin Feng, nothing is impossible for that boy. Surprisingly, he managed to gain entry for the Chi Xie soldiers into the Imperial city, said Chi Xie in a low voice. Lin Feng's determination and willpower were impressive. He had completely altered the course of events. He had then killed the kidnappers and rescued the princess, and on top of that, he returned unscathed. Lin Feng had the ability to shatter everyone's expectations. There were tears of joy in Lu Fei's eyes at that moment. That was perfect timing on Lin Feng's part, and besides, he had brought the powerful Chi Xie cavalry with him. He would definitely be able to protect her father. However, they seemed to be forgetting that DUAN Tianlang was extremely determined to kill Lu Zhanglan. Lin Feng. DUAN Tianlang's facial expression turned evil. He immediately shouted, "Get ready to kill Lu Zhanglan." "Roger," shouted the archers in unison. Immediately, Lu Fei and Chi Xie's facial expressions drastically changed. "DUAN Tianlang, don't you dare," furiously shouted Chi Xie while jumping in the air across the crowd. Boom boom boom. Chi Xie's blows killed a few of the archers. "Release the arrows," said DUAN Tianlang with a cold smile on his face. The arrows whistled through the air, moving straight towards Lu Zhanglan. At that moment, Chi Xie's face turned deathly pale. He immediately threw himself forwards at full speed. He had dived in front of Lu Zhanglan's body to protect him from the arrows. His entire body was releasing qi in the form of a strong wind. His entire body was covered with a bright and resplendent qi. "Get away," shouted Lu Zhanglan. His facial expression drastically changed. At that moment, Lu Zhanglan's body was tightly tied up and he couldn't use his cultivation. All Chi Xie could do was protect Lu Zhanglan with his body. "Uncle Jiu," cried Lu Fei in alarm. Immediately after, the sounds of the arrows piercing through the qi spread in the air. The arrows then continued and pierced into Chi Xie's body, but they didn't continue moving towards Lu Zhanglan. Chi Xie's body was their final destination. "Brother," cried Lu Zhanglan. His heart felt infinitely painful. On his forehead was a pitch-black seal. That seal kept glowing, making him unable to use his strength. "Die together," shouted DUAN Tianlang coldly. He then started moving, but at that moment, a piercingly cold energy arrived on his body. He felt as if he was going to freeze on the spot. Frozen heart. DUAN Tianlang stopped moving. His face turned deathly pale. He turned around and saw a wave of pure qi roll towards him. It was brutally cold. In a flash, he felt the extreme coldness on his body and was projected backwards, unable to move closer to Lu Zhanglan. "Die," said Lin Feng furiously. Lin Feng was brandishing his sword. Its light was extremely resplendent and dazzling to the eyes. The archers were unceasingly firing their arrows. Lin Feng's expression revealed pure killing intent. Ren Qingquang immediately killed the 4 people who were pulling the 4 chains which were holding Lu Zhanglan in place. Blood was unceasingly flowing from Chi Xie's mouth, but he was smiling. General, I will sacrifice my life for yours. After I die, Lin Feng can become the officer of the Chi Xie troops. Arg! Lu Zhanglan was endlessly grieved, his eyes were filled with tears. Chi Xie had been an extremely good friend for a dozen years. They had never argued and had always regarded each other as real brothers, they considered each other family. Many times, they had fought battles shoulder to shoulder. However, at that moment, Chi Xie had sacrificed himself. General, I would like to say one last thing. Chi Xie was leaning against Lu Zhanglan, he then leant over and whispered something in Lu Zhanglan's ear. The intensity of Chi Xie's voice was dropping. When he finished talking, he looked at Lu Zhanglan and smiled at him. General, for more than a dozen years, I have never called you anything else other than General. When addressing you, today, I will call you my brother. The word brother had a deep meaning. After saying that, Chi Xie's voice lost in intensity, his breath became weak and his vision became blurry. His vitality was quickly leaving his body and his eyes slowly closing. He was calmly lying against Lu Zhanglan's chest with an unchanging smile on his face. Lu Zhanglan was looking at Chi Xie and an endless stream of tears started to fall from his eyes. Brothers, could such a simple word really describe the relationship that these two had over these countless years? Chi Xie was motionless, lying against Lu Zhanglan's chest. He would never wake again. The ground was unceasingly shaking, people were shouting, the Chi Xie cavalry were galloping, and chaos reigned over the crowd. They were all running away from this scene. In a short moment, the Shuiyu soldiers were not encircling the death sentence stage anymore, instead, the Chi Xie cavalry had replaced them as the Shuiyu soldiers backed away. The ground was unceasingly shaking, people were shouting, the Chi Xie cavalry were galloping, and chaos reigned over the crowd. They were all running away from this scene. In a short moment, the Shuiyu soldiers were not encircling the death sentence stage anymore, instead, the Chi Xie cavalry had replaced them as the Shuiyu soldiers backed away. At the same time, a large group of Shuiyu soldiers were coming to attack from the back of the stage. But the Chi Xie cavalry all suddenly stopped and looked at the silhouette leaning against Lu Zhanglan's chest. In the past, that person used to be their leader, and he was now killed. SSSS, the spears of the Chi Xie troops flew through the air. Everyone's hearts started to race. Chi Xie soldiers were willing to encircle the Imperial city for their general, they were also capable of attacking Shuiyu soldiers for their officer. What was happening within that huge area was complete chaos, thousands of soldiers had already died, what was the reason? Lin Feng remained uncommunicative. Chi Xie was a true leader and a great man. Lin Feng's sword was dancing through the air. He cut the chains around Lu Zhanglan's body but Chi Xie was still leaning against him, in silence. Lin Feng, you came into the Imperial city with rebel forces and personally rescued the criminal, Lu Zhanglan. You deserve a death sentence, said DUAN Tian Lang, whose voice sounded ice-cold. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Rebel forces, said Lin Feng while fixedly staring at DUAN Tian Lang. His tone was cold too. Die, shouted one of the Chi Xie soldiers. Die. That shout was imposing and heavy. Deadly energy spread through the atmosphere. The Chi Xie soldier raised his long spear. Stop, shouted Lin Feng while turning around. In a flash, everybody quieted down, they were all staring at Lin Feng, they didn't understand why he had stopped them, nonetheless, they all stopped moving and remained silent. I haven't given you any order to attack, if you attack, I will personally kill you, said Lin Feng coldly. The hearts of the Chi Xie cavalry were pounding, but when they saw how strict Lin Feng looked, they all remained silent. Encircle the stage, said Lin Feng coldly. The Chi Xie soldiers obeyed his order and started galloping. In a flash, the Chi Xie soldiers encircled the entire death sentence stage so that not even a single drop of water could trickle through. At that moment, Lin Feng had become a sort of pillar for these soldiers. Even though he wasn't their direct superior, everybody obeyed his orders. You will die. Duan Han was standing next to Duan Tianlang. He narrowed his eyes and intensely stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng had led a rebel army. Even though Lin Feng was considered a hero in Shuiyu, he had committed a crime and had to pay for it. Lin Feng coldly glanced at Duan Han. Duan Han's heart twitched. He then closed his mouth and then Lin Feng disregarded him like he would an insect. He started walking to the front of the death sentence stage. Bring Her Highness up here, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, some soldiers wearing bronze masks slowly arrived. Behind them was a beautiful silhouette on a horse. That beautiful woman made people's heartbeats accelerate. She looked pure and noble. Incredibly, that was the princess of Shuiyu, Duan Xinyi. Princess, you have returned. Lin Feng really went to Muyu alone and returned with the princess, thought some people in the crowd while looking at that beautiful silhouette. Concerning Duan Tianlang, he narrowed his eyes. Not only had Lin Feng come but the princess too. Soldiers, salute your princess, said Lin Feng while glancing at the soldiers. They didn't understand what Lin Feng was doing at that moment, but knelt down on one knee and shouted in unison, Your Highness. Lin Feng calmly looked at the soldiers surrounding the death sentence stage and said coldly, How come Duan Tianlang's army did not salute the princess? Is she not your princess? Are you really this disrespectful? Duan Tianlang was stupefied. He immediately shouted coldly, Why are you not kneeling down? The Shuiyu soldiers obeyed the order and knelt down, while shouted in unison, Your Highness. Duan Tianlang salutes Your Highness. Your Highness has come back. This is great news for our country, Shuiyu, said Duan Tianlang while slightly bowing and lowering his head. This is all thanks to Lin Feng, said Duan Xinyi calmly while coldly looking at Duan Tianlang. When Duan Tianlang heard Duan Xinyi's manner of speaking, his facial expression changed. He didn't know what to say. He wanted Lin Feng to die and accused him of having brought rebel forces. But at that moment, Lin Feng had come back with the princess, which was an incredible military exploit. As expected, Lin Feng is our country's young hero, said Duan Tianlang while raising his head and then said in a small voice while smiling, but even though Lin Feng saved you, he has still committed a great crime by gathering rebel forces and bringing them into the Imperial city, and that is not an insignificant crime. Duan Tianlang is still thinking of how he can falsely accuse others of crimes, said Lin Feng indifferently. Duan Tianlang was stubborn and said, Meritorious acts are meritorious acts, crimes are crimes. I Duan Tianlang, must declare your faults for the sake of justice. Justice? Duan Tianlang, how long has it been since we last saw each other? It seems like you get even more shameless each time we meet. I thought it was impossible to be more shameless than you when we last met, but once again you have proven me wrong. Said Lin Feng in a cold tone. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng surprisingly dared to call Duan Tianlang shameless in front of everybody. The ground started shaking again and rumbling noises spread through the atmosphere. The crowd was surprised. The crowd moved back again and opened a path. At that moment, an incredible number of soldiers were coming. It was the Imperial Guards. Duan Tianlang felt relieved. A short moment after, the army of guards arrived. The Chi Xie soldiers surrounding the death sentence stage wanted to attack but Lin Feng waved his hand, signaling them to stand their ground and remain calm. Two silhouettes slowly came from the group of Imperial guards. One of them was wearing armor. He looked majestic and powerful, while the other was a handsome young man, the second prince, Duan Wuya. Did you kill Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong? This person is Meng Han, the officer of the Imperial Guards. Officer Meng Gufeng was his brother. Said Duan Wuya. Indeed, said Lin Feng sounding calm, cold and detached. Huh? Duan Tianlang was stupefied. Lin Feng had killed Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong. Inside, he was laughing coldly. He was evilly staring at Lin Feng and then said, Lin Feng, you saved the princess, which is a military exploit, but acting arrogantly, you dared to kill an officer and then bring rebel forces into the Imperial city. These are both extreme crimes against the country. To pay for your crimes, the only solution is death. Then, DUAN Tianlang turned around and looked to DUAN Wuya. Your Highness, please punish Lin Feng for his crimes. DUAN Wuya looked relaxed, he had perfectly mastered his emotions. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth and he said, Lin Feng, DUAN Tianlang wants to punish you for your crimes, is there anything you want to say? Yes, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. He then immediately turned to DUAN Tianlang and said, DUAN Tianlang, during the war, because he wanted to kill me, he created chaos within our army, allowing the MOU army to exploit the weakness that he created. Hundreds of thousands of Shuayu soldiers died so he could have the opportunity to kill me. It was a bloodbath. Now he wants to punish me for my crimes with a death sentence. I don't think that it's a strange thing at all. When Lin Feng finished talking, the crowd was astonished. DUAN Tianlang had caused chaos within their own army because he wanted to kill Lin Feng. From what they had heard, Lu Zhanglan was responsible for that. He's talking nonsense, Your Highness. Not only is Lin Feng a traitor but he is also a lying little rat. Don't trust him, said DUAN Tianlang. Of course, he wasn't going to admit his faults. Lin Feng perfectly knew that. DUAN Tianlang is calling me a traitor, yet he gives no explanation and wants punishment. At what moment have I rebelled? Asked Lin Feng. You came into the Imperial city with rebel forces, killed Meng Gufeng as well as Meng Chong, you encircled the death sentence stage and rescued Lu Zhanglan, who is a criminal. Everybody saw this with their own eyes. Is that enough? Shut your filthy mouth, furiously shouted Lin Feng, his eyes unveiled killing intent. He was exasperated. He then pointed at the Chi Xie cavalry. DUAN Tianlang, these soldiers have courageously fought against the enemy. We encircled them inside the city and burnt them alive inside. We killed hundreds of thousands of the MOU army. In the end they were forced to retreat. At that moment, I'm asking you, where were you? You had already deserted the army and ran back to the Imperial city like a little scared dog. You are really audacious. And now what? You are calling me a traitor, but I want to ask you, who are you to call me a traitor? Are you the one who decides? What status do you hold where you think that by calling me a traitor, I instantly become one? Lin Feng's voice sounded extremely cold. DUAN Tianlang was speechless. The crowd was also astonished. They had killed hundreds of thousands of MOU soldiers in Duanren city, and made them retreat. At that moment, DUAN Tianlang had already run away. How could he judge someone else's faults? DUAN Tianlang looked glum. He then coldly said, the Imperial city is a holy place in Shuayu. Is it normal for an army to enter it by force without permission? Is it normal to kill an officer and his son when entering the city? If that is not being a traitor, then what is? DUAN Tianlang looked glum. He then coldly said, the Imperial city is a holy place in Shuayu. Is it normal for an army to enter it by force without permission? Is it normal to kill an officer and his son when entering the city? If that is not being a traitor, then what is? The princess and I rushed back to the Imperial city, then some soldiers attempted to assassinate us. Besides, they were all Shuayu soldiers. They knew that the princess was there, but they still tried to kill us. I want to ask you, DUAN Tianlang, doesn't the whole army now follow your commands? Nonsense, how could they be my soldiers? Quickly refuted DUAN Tianlang angrily. Well then, the most amusing part is that even if they were not your soldiers, my role is to protect the princess, and I ordered the Chi Xie cavalry to protect her and accompany the princess to the Imperial city. However, DUAN Tianlang, you call me a traitor and want to kill me. You also called these soldiers rebel forces. If I understand your argument, you're clearly saying that we are a rebel army and deserve to die, because we protected the princess against countless squads of Shuiyu soldiers that you claim were not under your control, is that right? Lin Feng's words made Duan Tianlang's face sink. Lin Feng had only said a few words, but he had exposed Duan Tianlang. Lin Feng's last words had been so eloquent that they cornered Duan Tianlang. Of course, protecting the princess is not a crime, but Officer Meng Gufeng and Meng Chang's deaths, how do you explain them? Things are not as simple as you would have others believe, said Duan Tianlang looking evil. I was outside of the Imperial city. Meng Chong knew that the princess was amongst us but still gave the Shuiyu soldiers the order to fire arrows at us, including the princess. Duan Tianlang, Lin Feng, want to ask you, was killing him the right thing to do? Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes and said, yes, he deserved to die. Well then, I will ask you something else. Meng Chang's father, Officer Meng Gufeng, let his son give the order to kill the princess and then committed another offense by preventing the princess from entering the Imperial city. Was killing him the right thing to do? Lin Feng's voice was cold and sharp. It was the right thing to do, said Duan Tianlang, agreeing with Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang, you're saying it yourself, they deserve to die, so now I want to ask you, what crime have I committed? Am I a traitor because I came into the Imperial city with soldiers who were protecting the princess, said Lin Feng coldly while staring at Duan Tianlang. Lin Feng had prevented the Chi Xie soldiers from attacking because he had a plan. A few tens of thousands soldiers was a minuscule amount. If they had attacked, they would have immediately been considered as a rebel army and would have been wiped out. You protected the princess, that is indeed a meritorious act, but a moment before, you killed some soldiers which belonged to the enforcement troops and rescued the criminal Lu Zhanglan. Isn't that a crime? Of course that is not a crime, said Lin Feng while staring at Duan Tianlang, and then continued, General Lu Zhanglan went to war and fought against Mou for our country, Shuiyu, but you abandoned him. You're a deserter who accused him of your own crimes. How could I not save him? A deserter. Duan Tianlang had a hideous expression on his face. Lin Feng was, once again, humiliating him in front of everyone. Duan Tianlang, no need to hurry and justify yourself. I have been answering so many questions, however you have your own crimes to account for, said Lin Feng with a smile yet not a smile on his face. He then continued, Duan Tianlan, the Chi Xie cavalry and I were protecting the princess. Why can't you distinguish good from bad? Why do you say that we have committed crimes? Why did you hurry to accuse us of various crimes? Why are you trying at every possible occasion to sentence me to death? Besides, when I came here, why did you try and hurry the execution of Lu Zhanglan? Also, when the princess and I came back to the city, we were attacked by several squads of Shuiyu soldiers. As far as I know, you command those soldiers. Are you not the one who ordered them to kill me and the princess? Lin Feng's questions made the crowd astonished. It seemed like that entire story wasn't as simple as they had thought. All your questions are attempting to harm my reputation. I will refrain from answering them, said Duan Tianlang coldly. He didn't care. What could Lin Feng do anyway? You have the right not to care, but I want to ask you something. Has General Lu Zhanglan committed any crime? Duan Tianlang was furious and really wanted to kill Lin Feng. As far as Lu Zhanglan, everybody knew about him, nothing could be kept secret. Lu Zhanglan sowed disorder amongst the troops, making us lose a battle against Mou, leading to the death of hundreds of thousands of troops, and he didn't protect the princess who was kidnapped. Are all these crimes enough for him to be sentenced to death? This is your version of events. The person who committed all of these crimes, was it not actually you? Said Lin Feng while smiling indifferently. Immediately after, he pointed at Duan Wuya and said, the second prince is here as a witness. I hope that you would not dare to lie in the face of our second prince. It was me, admitted Duan Tianlang as he forced the words from his mouth. He, how shameless, what a shameless dog, but on the other hand, I am not surprised, said Lin Feng while smiling. His tone was humiliating Duan Tianlang. I just want to ask, you, DUAN Tianlang, you say that the princess was kidnapped. Where was she kidnapped exactly? Was she in one of Lu Zhanglan's tents at that moment, or was she in one of your tents? Lin Feng smiled and said, the princess is here before us. I hope that you would not be planning to tell any lies. DUAN Tianlang was blankly staring at Lin Feng. His mouth was about to move, but then DUAN Wuya spoke, Uncle, for the sake of justice, please reply to Lin Feng's questions. I will be fair. The situation was awkward for DUAN Tianlang. He said in a low voice, she was in one of the tents from my campsite. When the crowd heard DUAN Tianlang, they burst into an uproar. Surprisingly, it really was exactly as Lin Feng was explaining. Since those are the facts, there is something that I don't really understand. If the princess was kidnapped in one of your tents, why would Lu Zhanglan have to bear the responsibility for it? How has he committed a crime? Besides, you still have the face to order Lu Zhanglan's execution. I would like to hear your explanation. Lin Feng was speaking extremely loudly so that everybody could clearly hear what he was saying. Please explain. Shouted all of the Chi Xie soldiers who were encircling the death sentence stage. DUAN Tianlang's facial expression was utterly hideous. At that moment, if Lin Feng and DUAN Xinyi hadn't returned, Lu Zhanglan would have already been executed. The entire situation had changed. Lu Zhanglan is a general. He didn't properly ensure the security of the campsite, giving the MOU troops an opportunity to kidnap the princess. Of course that it is a crime, said DUAN Tianlang, trying to pass the blame again, but obviously, his argument couldn't persuade anyone in the crowd any longer. So that's the reason, said Lin Feng while smiling. Well, I was there too, and at the moment when I tried to chase the kidnappers, your troops obstructed my path and said that I plotted against the princess. You were the one who always wanted me dead. Immediately after the princess was kidnapped, you were already there to execute me, but did not see the kidnappers. How did you manage to do that? When Lin Feng said that, everybody looked at DUAN Tianlang expecting a prompt answer. Everybody wanted to know what really happened on the battlefield that had led to the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. DUAN Tianlang remained silent. Since DUAN Tianlang remained silent, I will say what happened myself. DUAN Tianlang, you wanted to make it appear as if I was the culprit and sacrificed the princess in order to settle a personal grudge with me. When Lu Zhanglan saw that you were trying to kill me unjustly, he brought his army to stop you, and then you ordered your soldiers to attack his. Clearly this was the act of a noble war hero. Besides, once disorder had been sown amongst the army, the MOU army attacked and they killed hundreds of thousands from the army. Lin Feng's voice was calm and solemn. While looking at DUAN Tianlang, he said, DUAN Tianlang, is what I am saying the truth or not? The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. Surprisingly, DUAN Tianlang was the person who caused so many deaths, and Lu Canlan was to be executed for DUAN Tianlang's crimes. Nonsense, furiously shouted DUAN Tianlang. Lin Feng was smiling and then continued, I am not done talking. DUAN Tianlang, there is no need for you to try and cover up the truth any longer. After the chaos, and after hundreds of thousands of soldiers had been killed, the Shuiyu army returned to Duanren City. There was evidence that the person who kidnapped the princess was working for Mo Yu. Besides, at the moment when the princess had been kidnapped, it was soldiers under your command that blocked my path and let the kidnappers escape. They were traitors, and yet again they were surprisingly under your command. I can say that there isn't a single person within the army who doesn't know about these acts of treason. What explanation can you provide? So that's how it happened. The person who kidnapped the princess was from Mou, and DUAN Tianlang was the one giving the orders. Besides, he was using every opportunity to kill Lin Feng. That news was shocking. After that, Lu Zhanglan and I fought against the enemy, organized an ambush in Duanren City and set it on fire. At that moment, you, DUAN Tianlang, had already deserted to the Imperial City. Everyone knows what happened after. You changed the entire story and gave Shuiyu a false version of events in which Lu Zhanglan was responsible for your crimes. Then you had done your best to execute Lu Zhanglan. Besides, the princess and I were missing and assumed dead, so we could not testify to your crimes. The problem is that if either of us returned alive, you would have been in trouble, so you ordered several squads of soldiers to kill us on the way." When Lin Feng finished talking, the entire crowd was drowned into silence. The crowd was now having doubts. Maybe DUAN Tianlang was really the mastermind behind this entire plot. Lin Feng, you're just trying to ruin my reputation. What you're saying is a pack of lies. I have never dispatched anyone to kill you or the princess. Besides, I suspect that you're the one who kidnapped the princess, and it is only because you have threatened her and she's under pressure that she listens to you, said DUAN Tianlang while making a false accusation. Lin Feng, you're just trying to ruin my reputation. What you're saying is a pack of lies. I have never dispatched anyone to kill you or the princess. Besides, I suspect that you're the one who kidnapped the princess, and it is only because you have threatened her and she's under pressure that she listens to you, said DUAN Tianlang while making a false accusation. Is that so? How come the high-ranking soldiers who tried to kill me told me that they were only obeying orders, and the Black Guard lieutenants confirmed that you were collaborating with MOU? You sowed disorder within our army, which resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. If you were not working with MOU, why would you have attacked Lutsanglan's army? You, DUAN Tianlang, are good at secretly at plotting against people, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. The crowd was astonished. DUAN Tianlang had collaborated with MOU? Lin Feng's words were too powerful. These crimes were enough for DUAN Tianlang to be sentenced to death a few times over. DUAN Tianlang's heart was also pounding. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was also declaring that DUAN Tianlang had collaborated with MOU. Lin Feng, I devoted my life to Shuiyu and you dare say that I collaborated with the enemy. How am I supposed to let you live? Said DUAN Tianlang while releasing a deadly chi. He really wanted to kill Lin Feng. So that's how it is, you really did commit all of these crimes. I said that you collaborated with MOU, and again the only thing you can do is try to silence me. Apart from that crime, you also deserted and created chaos within the troops, which resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It was a bloodbath. Then, you tried to make Lu Tsanglan bear the responsibility for all of these crimes, then you almost killed him. Also, because of you, the officer of the Chi Xie army, Chi Xie, is now dead. How could the army of Chi Xie forgive you? Lin Feng sounded imposing and domineering. Immediately after, he looked at the soldiers and said, "Tell me, can you forgive DUAN Tianlang?" "No. We can't." The tens of thousands of Chi Xie soldiers were shouting loudly and aggressively. DUAN Tianlang suddenly had the impression that he was being absorbed by Lin Feng. "All right," shouted Lin Feng. Immediately after, he looked at the second prince and said, "Your Highness, you have seen it too. I only said a few truths and DUAN Tianlang tries to kill me. Besides, the soldiers cannot forgive him for what he has done. Now, if DUAN Tianlang kills me, I will have no regrets because I have done nothing wrong. However, I would like to ask Your Highness and Officer Meng not to intervene in this fight." DUAN Wuye had remained silent. Almost the entire time, he looked pensive while looking at Lin Feng. He was also surprised. Lin Feng's words had been sharp, harsh and powerful. DUAN Tianlang couldn't reply at all. At that moment, a battle was probably going to break out, and if Officer Meng didn't get involved, Lin Feng would have the advantage. At the moment, I cannot clearly distinguish what is right and wrong, but there is already a profound hatred between DUAN Tianlang and you. If he wants to fight against you, I will not prevent him from doing so. I want to see if he believes he has the required ability to kill you, said DUAN Wuye indifferently. Everybody was astonished. DUAN Wuye said that he was wondering if DUAN Tianlang had the ability to kill Lin Feng, but actually, that was covering his tacit consent for Lin Feng to dispose of DUAN Tianlang as he wished. But everybody understood what DUAN Wuye meant. He had agreed and the crowd was astonished. DUAN Tianlang also remained silent. Hian felt ice-cold chill in his heart. Duan Wuya was not hiding his intentions anymore, he wanted to kill him. Officer Meng, said Duan Tianlang while glancing at Duan Wuya and then immediately looking at Meng Han. Duan Tianlang has a high status within the Imperial family. I, Meng Han, am the officer of the Imperial Guard. I have to protect the entire Imperial family. I obviously couldn't accept it if anything happens to Duan Tianlang, said Meng Han sounding calm. He was clearly on Duan Tianlang's side. Duan Xie and Duan Wuya were worried about Lin Feng, they would help him even if it meant contradicting Duan Tianlang. Lin Feng was calmly looking at everything that was happening around him. Besides, Meng Han, who was the officer of the Imperial Guards, didn't even care about making Duan Wuya lose face. It seems like the fact that Duan Wuya and Meng Han both came has a profound meaning, it shows that they are both in opposing factions, thought Lin Feng. The things that happened within the Imperial family were hard to understand. Hee. When Duan Wuya heard Meng Han, he laughed, but the laugh also contained some coldness. An officer of the Imperial Guard, indeed, thought Duan Wuya. Immediately after, he started walking slowly towards Duan Xie and asked, Xie, is what Lin Feng said the truth? Did you really get kidnapped in Duan Tianlang's tent? Yes, it is the truth, said Duan Xie while nodding and then added, on that day, Lin Feng and I were chatting in the tent when suddenly, an assassin came and as Lin Feng saved me, I was kidnapped. After that, the kidnapper confirmed that he received orders from the Holy Courtyard and Uncle Duan, who were cooperating with MOU. Duan Tianlang was also plotting against Lin Feng. I understand, said Duan Wuya while slightly nodding and then immediately said, Xie, you went through many hardships because of me. When he finished talking, Duan Wuya walked back towards Duan Tianlang, who started feeling uncertain. Duan Tianlang didn't fear many people, but Duan Wuya was one of those he feared. Duan Wuya's way of working wasn't easy to understand. There were very few people who could guess what he was thinking. Then, Lin Feng and Lu Zhanglan managed to encircle the enemy in Duanren city and burnt the city, killing a few 100,000 enemy soldiers, then they were forced to retreat back to MOU. Duan Tianlang, would you like to say anything about this? Duan Tianlang was fixedly staring at Duan Wuya and said, no. Alright, said Duan Wuya while nodding and continued, during the battle, a few 100,000 soldiers were sacrificed, but regardless of that, Lin Feng and the princess have come back to the Imperial city alive and the invading army has been repelled. Besides, there was also a huge misunderstanding about Lu Zhanglan, right? That's right, said Duan Tianlang who didn't feel like nodding anymore. Good, said Duan Wuya while nodding. He started walking on the death sentence stage and glanced at the crowd. He then said, the dead are already gone and I am not looking for the guilty party any longer, but my family has falsely accused General Lu Zhanglan. General Lu Zhanglan, the Divine Arrow, has always been loyal, devoted and courageous. He has always fought for the country. We can't forget that. I will report all of this to my father. I would like to grant Lu Zhanglan with the status of Imperial Minister and he will also retain his status as a general. Besides, we will grant Chi Xie with a posthumous title for his courage and loyalty. He was conferring an imperial title upon Lu Zhanglan and a posthumous title upon Chi Xie. For Lu Zhanglan, that didn't matter much, in Duanren city, he was already like a king. As far as Chi Xie, what was the point in granting him a title? He was already dead. But Duan Wuya's point was more about admitting that the imperial family had made mistakes. They had unjustly accused Lu Zhanglan, but they recognized his loyalty and courage. Uncle, do you agree with these things? Said Duan Wuya while looking at Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang was surprised and had no choice but to nod. They were rendering justice to Lu Zhanglan and at the same time establishing Duan Tianlang's own guilt. Lu Zhanglan retained his title as a general. General, what do you think about it? Asked Duan Wuya to Lu Zhanglan. Lu Zhanglan still had Chi Xie's corpse leaning against him. He slowly looked at the Chi Xie troops. He looked expressionless. I, Lu Zhanglan, am grateful to the second prince, thank you for your kindness. I am willing to accept these titles, said Lu Zhanglan, sounding indifferent. General. Marquis of Yangzhou City. Marquis of Yangzhou City. The crowd was stupefied. Officer of the Chi Xie troops and Marquis of the Fief of Yangzhou. In Shuiyu, those who had the most power after the imperial family were imperial ministers, and directly below them was Marquis. Some Marquis reigned over a village while some others reigned over a city. Owning a city was required to be considered as a true Marquis. Even though Yangzhou City wasn't very big, Duan Wuya's move was of the highest significance. He had made Lin Feng into a true Marquis. He had given Lin Feng incredible power. From that moment, Yangzhou City belonged to Lin Feng. Every inhabitant of Yangzhou was under Lin Feng's control, and all of their lives belonged to him. At that moment, a realization flashed through Lin Feng's eyes. He realized that Duan Wuya was honoring his promise. He had hoped that Lin Feng would perform meritorious acts during the war so that he could provide him with a social status. Now that Lin Feng was back in the Imperial City, Duan Wuya was granting Lin Feng with a social status, and at the same, he was directly implying that Lin Feng was part of his faction. Thank you, Your Highness, said Lin Feng in a low voice. Of course, he wasn't going to refuse Duan Wuya's offer. There were many strong cultivators in Shuiyu, and Lin Feng still wasn't extremely strong. Receiving such an opportunity was a great chance for him. Don't get too happy yet. My father still has to make the final decision, said Duan Wuya while smiling warmly. Even though he was saying that, the whole crowd knew that everything was already set in stone. The final decision was just part of the process. Once the prince announced it, it was confirmed. If Duan Wuya wasn't sure about what he said, he wouldn't have said it in front of everyone. If the decision was overturned, he would have lost face. Lin Feng slightly nodded and remained silent. Duan Wuya turned towards Duan Xianyi and said, Xianyi, that guy, Meng Chong, did he really attack you? Was Meng Gufeng really there, on the gate with him? Duan Xianyi looked at Duan Wuya and nodded. Yes, everybody saw us outside of the Imperial City. Meng Chong gave the troops the orders to kill Lin Feng and me. Besides, Meng Gufeng didn't want to allow me entry into the Imperial City. Duan Wuya slightly nodded and said, Meng Gufeng was an officer and he committed a terrible crime. He illegally granted power to Meng Chong, who then used that power to try and kill my little sister. A soldier of the Imperial City, who wants to kill the princess, deserves death. When the crowd heard Duan Wuya, they were surprised. Meng Gufeng and Meng Chong had already died. Why was Duan Wuya still talking about them? But at the moment, when they were asking themselves questions, Duan Wuya looked at Meng Han. The crowd was wondering what was going on. Meng Han's heart also started accelerating. He had the impression that something ominous was going to happen. A moment before, he had made Duan Wuya lose face by supporting Duan Tianlang. Officer Meng Gufeng attempted to assassinate the princess. Even though he is dead already, his brother Meng Han is still the officer of the Imperial Guards. I think that it is necessary to carry out a full investigation. Meng Han, you are already not an appropriate choice to occupy the function of officer of the Imperial Guards. When Duan Wuya finished talking, people's hearts were racing. The second prince was extremely fierce and harsh. Meng Han couldn't refute his argument. Meng Han's heart violently pounded as well. He wanted Duan Wuya to die for finding such an excuse to dismiss him. Meng Han turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang, who remained silent. Duan Tianlang was already in a critical situation himself. Duan Wuya hadn't decided what he wanted to do with him, otherwise, he wouldn't remain so polite. At that moment though, he didn't want to anger the second prince. The second prince was fierce, intrepid and tough. Meng Han saw that Duan Tianlang remained silent. He then said to Duan Wuya, Your Highness, Meng Feng committed crimes, but what does that have to do with me? Even though he was my brother, I know nothing about that. How can you blame me and dismiss me from my function as an officer of the Imperial Guard? Meng Han, I didn't say that it had something to do with you either, but Meng Feng was involved in an assassination attempt on the princess of the Imperial family. I, as the second prince, must investigate. It is my duty as I don't understand the whole situation. Wait until we have gathered all of the facts with a thorough investigation, and if you are absolutely clean, you will be able to return to your post as an officer of the Imperial Guard. Duan Wuya's argument sounded quite logical, but everybody knew that Meng Han was being relieved of his position as an officer of the Imperial Guard. It would be extremely difficult for him to hold such a high position again. It was actually almost impossible. I, Meng Han, am innocent, said Meng Han coldly. He was standing tall and upright and fixedly staring at Duan Wuya. At that moment, he was still in a position of power, with the Imperial Guards obeying his orders. If the second prince wanted to attack him, it wouldn't be that easy. However, as time went on, people would come to assist him. Meng Han, how audacious! How does he even have the courage to talk to the second prince that way? It seems like there are some people from above supporting Meng Han, whispered the people far away in the crowd. Meng Han had immediately contradicted Duan Wuya, in front of everybody. Hee hee. Duan Wuya laughed, his smile hadn't disappeared. Meng Han, what you mean is that I am groundlessly dismissing you from your functions. Do you mean that you will not obey my orders? You, Meng Han, intend to do what? Keep your function as an officer by force? How could I, Meng Han, not obey the second prince's order? It's just that the function of officer of the Imperial Guard is very important. Apart from me, nobody else can do it. Besides, the Imperial Guards also consider me as their brothers. It is not their wish to see anyone replace me. Is that so? Asked Duan Wuya with an evil smile on his face, which made Meng Han's facial expression change. CRR, CRR. A faint and subtle sound spread in the air. Meng Han was violently shaking and breathing heavily. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Not only was Meng Han's heart pounding, but the crowd were also on edge from watching this. Blood was unceasingly flowing from Meng Han's mouth. He lowered his head and only saw the tip of a silver spear that had pierced through his chest from behind. The Imperial Guards were like his brothers and didn't want to see anyone replace him. His voice was still resonating in people's minds, but the reality was much harsher. Meng Han moved his body. He wanted to turn around, but the spear was not moving. Suddenly, a deadly energy penetrated his body and destroyed his organs. The crowd was astonished. Blood sprayed out from his mouth and his lifeless body slowly collapsed onto the floor. After Meng Han collapsed, the high-ranking soldiers who were behind him were absolutely calm. Their expression hadn't changed whatsoever. They all looked extremely serene and peaceful. There were about 30 guards in this high-ranking group. They were all young, but their coldness was enough to make other people's hearts feel a tinge of fear. Meng Han's brother, Meng Feng, attempted to kill the princess. Meng Han refused to admit it and kept contradicting Your Highness over and over again. I, Yu Ji, the non-commissioned officer of the Imperial Guards, killed him for his insubordination. Please forgive me for taking action, Your Highness. Yu Ji was kneeling down and bowing in front of Duan Wuya. Behind Yu Ji, the army of Imperial Guards remained motionless. All of them looked calm and serene as if they were not surprised at all. They almost agreed with how the events had played out. Everybody was astonished by the coldness of that scene. Meng Feng had been plotting against my little sister and wanted to kill her. Meng Han hasn't expressed any regret at all and refused to acknowledge his brother's crime. Besides, he was extremely rude to me. Even though Yu Ji killed Meng Han and that is a crime, it is still a sign of loyalty and devotion to the Imperial family. Duan Wuya was speaking slowly and then continued, Today, Meng Han died, but it is required for the guards to have an officer. Yu Ji, you are, for the time being, promoted to the position of officer of the Imperial Guards. Thank you, Your Highness, said Yu Ji while respectfully bowing and kneeling down. Immediately after, he stood up. At the same time, the high-ranking Imperial guards behind him also bowed respectfully and shouted in unison, His Highness is wise and kind, we thank you for our new officer. All the ordinary Imperial guards were stupefied and were just realizing what had happened. They then slowly knelt down and shouted in unison, His Highness. Thank you for our new officer. These extremely loud voices were resonating through the crowd. People's hearts were violently pounding, they were unable to calm down. How fierce and powerful. DUAN Wuya could control the Imperial guards so easily, his methods were intense. If the crowd didn't know that Yu Ji was one of DUAN Wuya's factions, all sorts of rumors would be spread. Lin Feng calmly smiled at DUAN Wuya but was still feeling a bit cold in his heart. DUAN Wuya was dangerous, extremely dangerous. Everybody, stand up, said DUAN Wuya while waving his hand. The ones who were still kneeling down slowly stood up, but for a long time, they were unable to calm down. A position as important as officer of the Imperial Guard had been transferred so easily. Everybody, stand up, said DUAN Wuya while waving his hand. The ones who were still kneeling down slowly stood up, but for a long time, they were unable to calm down. A position as important as officer of the Imperial Guard had been transferred so easily. DUAN Wuya's opinion was that there was nothing special or surprising about it. It was as if the Imperial Guard didn't mean that much to him. Yu Ji, now you are the officer of the Imperial Guard, you know what you have to do. Yu Ji nodded and bowed while saying, Your Highness, I will leave with the guards now and patrol the streets to ensure the residents' safety. All right, you can go, said DUAN Wuya while waving. Immediately after, several tens of thousands of guards left, only those from Duanren City, who were surrounding the death sentence stage, were still there. Nobody could threaten them. Duan Tianlang and his son's facial expression was growing more and more hideous. Duan Tianlang had wanted to kill Lu Zhanglan, but at the crucial moment, Lin Feng had appeared with Duan Xinyi. They had rushed over and killing Lu Zhanglan had become impossible, he was going to stay alive. Besides, Duan Han wanted to marry Lu Fei. Using Lu Zhanglan's life as a bargaining tool, he had been blackmailing her. If she wasn't willing to engage in a relationship with him, he would turn his back on Lu Zhanglan, who would then die. Lu Fei hated him and didn't want to become his wife, she rejected his offer. What was making them boil with envy was that Lin Feng had become a Marquis, the officer of the Chi Xie army, and had obtained the control of his hometown. Besides, DUAN Wuya had also appointed a new person to be the officer of the Imperial Guards. It was a crushing defeat for them. All these things had happened because of one person, Lin Feng. At that moment, Duan Tianlang and his son were looking at Lin Feng with ice-cold glares. Lin Feng turned around and looked at them. His face was filled with killing intent and he made no attempt to hide it. Lin Feng, we're stopping this for the time being, said DUAN Wuya in a low voice when he sensed Lin Feng was ready to kill. Duan Tianlang had a high status, he was a noble from the Duan clan. Duan Tianlang was a member of the Imperial family. Killing him isn't as easy as killing Meng Han, it would need a justified reason. Lin Feng had no excuse to kill Duan Tianlang at that moment. Yes, I understand, Your Highness. What happened today is over, for the time being, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. The soldiers sighed. Duan Tianlang would stay alive after all he had done, even though the blood of so many people was on his hands. Of course, they weren't blaming Lin Feng. What he had done wasn't easy at all. If Lin Feng hadn't been there, Lu Zhanglan would have been executed and they would have been doomed as well, as they would have been considered as a rebel army. But at that moment, Lin Feng turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang and Duan Han. He said, what happened today is over for now, but last time, Duan Tianlang brought an army to exterminate the Yunhai sect. The Yunhai sect turned into a bloodbath. I, Lin Feng, as a disciple of the Yunhai sect, need to get my revenge because of the hatred left deep within my heart. Therefore, the enmity between DUAN Tianlang and me will never end without his death. The crowd was stupefied. It wasn't over. Lin Feng used to be a disciple of the Yunhai sect, therefore, he had an excuse for not letting past grievances be settled. So that's how it is. DUAN Tianlang exterminated the Yunhai sect, of which Lin Feng used to be a disciple. His hatred for DUAN Tianlang should be endless. How could he forget such a thing? DUAN Tianlang is his enemy and the hatred is too deeply engraved in his heart. There is no solution. With such justification, Duan Wuya cannot say anything either. People in the crowd were all trying to understand the situation. Then, they saw Lin Feng turn around. He looked at the troops and at Ren Qingquang in particular. Officer Ren, sorry for causing you trouble, please take the troops out of the city and wait for me there. I have something to do here, I will come to you when I'm done, said Lin Feng to Ren Qingquang. Immediately, many started shouting from within the army. We're not leaving, the officer is here, we're staying. Yes, we will stay with our officer. The Chi Xie troops were shouting in protest. The crowd was surprised. Lin Feng was so young and his troops were already extremely loyal and devoted to him, these feelings were already deeply engraved into their hearts. Surprisingly, even before Lutsang Lan had assigned Lin Feng as their new officer, they have already regarded him as their leader. Get the hell out of here, all of you. If you don't hurry, I'll get angry, said Lin Feng sounding ice cold. The troops were all a bit surprised. Officer Ren, sorry for the inconvenience. Lin Feng coldly looked at the troops and then at Ren Qingquang. If they stayed with him, it would be the same as continuing to talk about the problems that happened on that day. Even though in itself, it was the same, it was no longer about the grievance between DUAN Tianlang and the Chi Xie army. Lin Feng needed to justify his reason for revenge because Duan Wuya was there. Duan Wuya had freed Lutsang Lan, giving him the title of Imperial Minister, he had given Lin Feng the title of Marquis. All these things were supposed to make them stop pursuing issues caused by the war. If Lin Feng continued, Duan Wuya would not tolerate it. Therefore, at that moment, he gave a new reason. The Yunhai sect had been destroyed, the troops thus had to leave as it did not involve them. All right, said Ren Qingquang. He perfectly understood Lin Feng. Ren Qingquang shouted, troops, listen to your orders, leave the Imperial city immediately. After saying that, Ren Qingquang turned around and slowly left. The troops, even though they were doing it against their own will, still obeyed Lin Feng's order and galloped away. Immediately after, Ren Qingquang also left with them. A short time later, all the troops had left the Imperial city. The area seemed deserted. In the entire area, the only ones left were Lin Feng, Meng Qing, the Celestial Sword Battalion, Duan Wuya, Duan Xinyi, Duan Tianlang and his son. At that moment, Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes and evilly stared at Lin Feng. That boy wasn't going to give up. Duan Wuya hadn't thought that Lin Feng would be so stubborn either, but Lin Feng had mentioned the extermination of the Yunhai sect and his status as a disciple of the Yunhai sect. Of course, his heart was filled with hatred. Lin Feng, shouted Duan Wuya at that moment. Lin Feng turned around and immediately heard him say, Lin Feng, Duan Tianlang is an imperial family member, his title of being an imperial family member is higher than that of Marquis, more respectable, you cannot attack him. I know, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. Duan Wuya was a bit surprised, since Lin Feng knew, what else did he want? Your Highness, Duan Tianlang is a member of the imperial family and your uncle, his status is respectable and extremely high, I will obviously not attack him, said Lin Feng sounding detached. The crowd didn't understand him at all. But then they heard Lin Feng continue, however, back in the past, Duan Tianlang had brought his son along, Duan Han, who helped him to slaughter the Yunhai sect, my sect. Duan Han is extremely arrogant and thinks he is better than me. He even said that I wouldn't withstand a single attack when we fought. Now, Duan Han, the young noble without an incredible status, is before me. I, Lin Feng, am already a Marquis. It should be enough for me to have a battle against him. Right here, right now, I would like him to enlighten me as he said he would in the past. When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they immediately understood who his target was. It wasn't Duan Tianlang but Duan Han. Lin Feng was challenging Duan Han. However, Duan Han, at that moment, would never want to fight. He remembered that day, at the Yunhai sect, he thought that he was extremely strong, but then at that moment, fighting against Lin Feng had become difficult for him. Lin Feng had always been stronger than Duan Han. Duan Han didn't have the courage to fight against Lin Feng anymore. Duan Han felt awkward and was staring Lin Feng. He had a hideous facial expression. How was he supposed to accept Lin Feng's challenge? We refuse. Duan Han and I have things to do, we have no time, said Duan Tianlang, sounding cold and detached. Things to do? Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. Duan Tianlang, when you went to destroy the Yunhai sect, did you ask the people of the Yunhai sect if they would accept? Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes. That was ridiculous, how could they accept? Duan Tianlang, when the princess was taken away, your troops blocked my path and tried to kill me. Did you ask me if I had the time? Lin Feng ignored Duan Tianlang and continued, besides, Duan Tianlang, when you and your son set a trap in order to kill me which led to the death of hundreds of thousands from the Shuiyu army, then deserted the battlefield in order to rush back and try to have Lu Tsanglan executed, did you ask everybody else if they accepted? Lin Feng's voice was growing louder and louder. A cold and deadly energy emerged from his body. Lin Feng, who was always calm, was furious. How powerful! What Lin Feng meant is that there was no choice, he was fighting Duan Han regardless of who stood in his way. Lin Feng had an evil smile on his face and was staring at Duan Han. He then said in an ice-cold tone, Duan Han, back in the days, at the Yunhai sect, you considered everyone beneath your attention but our battle was not allowed an end. You have to treat a man as he treated you. Today, we finish our battle. When Lin Feng finished talking, he started walking forward. That battle could happen because of a single justifiable excuse. It wasn't about wanting to battle, it was about finishing their unfinished battle. In the world of cultivation, Lin Feng was always moving closer to his goal of soaring in the clouds. Try if you dare, shouted Duan Tianlang furiously. He then started walking forward and a deadly qi emerged from his body. Lin Feng surprisingly wanted to kill Duan Han, his son. How could Duan Tianlang accept that? Try if you dare, shouted Duan Tianlang furiously. He then started walking forward and a deadly qi emerged from his body. Lin Feng surprisingly wanted to kill Duan Han, his son. How could Duan Tianlang accept that? Stop! Shouted a furious Meng Qing. Ice qi and force invaded the atmosphere. Meng Qing took a few steps and landed in front of Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang also had the strength of the Xian qi layer. If Lin Feng wanted to kill Duan Han, how could he resist to Duan Tianlang? Obviously, Meng Qing had to get involved. Lin Feng didn't need to say anything, that was obvious. Kacha! Even more ice appeared in the atmosphere. Duan Tianlang was surprised, his facial expression was hideous. An incredible quantity of sword energy emerged from his body. Duan Tianlang had a blood spirit and had awakened the strength within his blood, but that strength was too weak, therefore, he was also using his sword spirit. Duan Han also had a sword spirit. Dual spirit. A long sword appeared which pointed towards the sky. His sword spirit and the sword in his hand seemed to be in perfect symbiosis, both as sharp as the other. Besides, at that moment, Lin Feng was slowly walking towards Duan Han. Each and every step that Lin Feng took made Duan Han's heartbeat grew faster. Duan Han didn't stop retreating backwards. Back in the past, at the Yunhai sect, you were high-spirited, vigorous and daring. Today, you are as scared a cowardly mutt who keeps on flinching, you don't even dare to fight. Lin Feng said these words jokingly. He wasn't in a hurry to kill Duan Han. He was convinced that Duan Tianlang would also remember Meng Qing and her strength, allowing him to see his son, Duan Han, get killed without being able to do anything in retaliation. Lin Feng wanted to make Duan Tianlang understand that, back in the days, he had the power to bully Lin Feng, but now, Lin Feng could slowly kill his son right in front of him and he would not be able to lift a finger. He would show him how cruel he could truly be and make his son suffer in his place. When the people saw Lin Feng slowly walking towards Duan Han, their hearts also started beating faster. When Duan Wuya saw that Lin Feng wanted to kill Duan Han, an offspring of the Duan family, he surprisingly didn't try to block him, which meant that he tacitly agreed. Die! Lin Feng was getting nearer and nearer. Duan Tianlang shouted loudly while his sword slashed through the atmosphere. An endless quantity of sword chi appeared and slashed through the world of ice. The sound of sword energy clashing against ice energy filled the air. Ice diamond, said Meng Qing in a low voice. She waved her hand and an ice crystal appeared and froze Duan Tianlang's sword entirely. Lin Feng was very near to Duan Han. A sharp and deadly energy completely enveloped Duan Han's body. It was filled with deadly chi. Under that deadly energy, Duan Han didn't even have the courage to resist. Lin Feng's aura of a death god sufficed to make him tremble in fear. Could it be that you are afraid now? When you were at the top of the cliff face, you were cold-bloodedly watching the Yunhai sect members get slaughtered, you were feeling comfortable and satisfied, right? When you and your father got a few 100,000 soldiers killed, didn't you have the feeling that your plan was a great success? Lin Feng's voice sounded evil and its coldness invaded Duan Han's heart. Arf! Duan Tianlang shouted like an animal, abandoned his sword and jumped towards Duan Han. Frozen heart, said Meng Qing in a low voice. Duan Tianlang started shaking violently. He had the feeling that his heart was being completely frozen. Blood started flowing from his mouth. But Duan Tianlang didn't pay attention to that, all that mattered to him was his son couldn't die. Oh, you came? Said Lin Feng with an ice-cold smile on the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, his silhouette disappeared, he was absorbed into the void of darkness. Die, said a voice coming from the void. The crowd saw, in the middle of that emptiness, a cross appeared. That cross was resplendent and dazzling to the eyes. The cross turned into a sanguinary sword. On Duan Han's neck there was a small cross, a small bloody cross. Duan Tianlang stopped moving. His mouth was wide open. He was just feeling infinitely cold as he was blankly staring at his son, Duan Han, who slightly lifted his head to look at his father. Duan Tianlang could see the cross-shaped mark on his neck and the blood endlessly gushing out from it. Duan Han, shouted Duan Tianlang with a husky voice. He was shaking from head to toe. He grabbed his son and hugged him tightly. He saw his son's lips, which were moving, but he couldn't speak a word as he was drowning in his own blood. At that moment, his son collapsed in his arms. Cough, cough. Duan Tianlang coughed and blood was forced out of his mouth. He looked deathly pale. His son was dead, he had been killed by Lin Feng and died in his arms. At the moment, when he had almost reached his son, Lin Feng forced him to watch his son drown in his own blood. Invisible like a shadow, invisible and silent, that was the deadly cross shadow. It hurts, doesn't it, Duan Tianlang? Back then, at the Yunhai sect, when you slaughtered all those people, or after when you set a trap for a few 100,000 soldiers, you were not thinking about their friends and their families, you also didn't think about the pain that they would have to go through, said Lin Feng, who was standing behind Duan Tianlang watching the scene. Lin Feng, furiously shouted Duan Tian Lang while releasing a deadly energy. You don't need to shout, I know that you wish you could hack me into a million pieces, I understand your hatred because I feel that hatred inside me, and my hatred is much more terrifying than yours, said Lin Feng sounding calm. He then continued, now, it is between you and me. If you have an opportunity to kill me, feel free to try. Because if, someday, I have the opportunity to kill you, I will unleash my hatred and show you no mercy. While talking, Lin Feng turned around, his silhouette flickered and he moved back to his original position. Immediately after, he said to Duan Wuya, Your Highness, I am now taking my leave. Duan Wuya slightly nodded and said, Lin Feng, I will be waiting for your return in the lovesick forest by the lake. Lin Feng muttered something to himself, but immediately after nodded and said, All right. Lin Feng then waved. Those who were wearing bronze masks, even though their faces were covered, all had an aura of satisfaction, they looked inspired and enthusiastic. Many of them used to be Yunhai sect disciples. Duan Tian Lang and Duan Han had annihilated the Yunhai sect, which was why they had the slave marks carved into their faces. Duan Tian Lang and Duan Han were their sworn enemies. When they saw Lin Feng kill Duan Han and force Duan Tian Lang into such a situation, how could they not feel satisfied? They coldly glanced at Duan Tian Lang, then turned around and followed Lin Feng. Then, altogether, they galloped away. Duan Tian Lang was showing no sign of indignation or anger, he didn't do anything irrational. Meng Qing had already badly injured him. While Meng Qing was there, it was impossible for him to kill Lin Feng. If he attacked Lin Feng, Meng Qing would continue to inflict injuries. Who was that beautiful girl, whose face was covered with a fine veil, and why was she following Lin Feng? She was extremely strong. Lin Feng, if I, Duan Tian Lang, don't kill you, my life will not be worth living, said Duan Tian Lang while feeling that his son's skin was growing colder and more lifeless. He uttered a long and mournful cry. A strong wind blew over the area, everybody was feeling cold. They were looking at the silhouettes slowly disappearing. They all understood that Xueyu had an incredible young genius. He had confined enemy troops in a city, set it on fire, and killed hundreds of thousands of them. He had galloped over an endless distance, saved the princess and brought her back alive, he had killed an officer of the Imperial city, he had saved Lu Tsanglan who was about to get executed by Duan Tian Lang, he had become a Marquis and possessed a city and then he killed Duan Han in front of his father's eyes. Lin Feng's name was definitely going to be famous in the entire country. Outside of the Imperial city, the army had gathered. At that moment, the city gate was open, a group of armored horses passed through it. Immediately, the crowd looked towards the gate. In the lovesick forest, it was as usual, misty, there was a thick fog floating above the ground. It looked like heaven on earth. In the lovesick forest, it was as usual, misty, there was a thick fog floating above the ground. It looked like heaven on earth. In the pavilion, two people were drinking lovesick alcohol. Duan Wuya was one of them. The other one was a smart, elegant, handsome and spirited man. That man looked natural and unrestrained. At that moment, he was still wearing his armor, the armor of an officer. He looked majestic. It was the officer of the Imperial Guards, Yu Ji. What do you think, said Duan Wuya sounding indifferent while sipping on his glass of lovesick alcohol. Your Highness, before the battle, I had already secured the situation, all the Imperial Guards are now in our faction. Now, it is only about consolidating and purging. From today, the guards are yours, Your Highness. Oh, said Duan Wuya while lightly nodding. It was impossible to see if he was happy or worried. He was expressionless and uncommunicative. At that moment, someone wearing black clothes was approaching and arrived at the pavilion, he slightly bowed in front of the second prince and said, Your Highness. Nan Shan, Sit down, said Duan Wuya while waving and smiling softly and warmly. Nan Shan slightly nodded and immediately sat down opposite Yu Ji. He said, Your Highness, Lu Tsanglan went back to Duanren City but he gave his army to Lin Feng. He wants them to stay with him. Great news. Duan Wuya paused and then said, while nodding, maybe then he'll be able to use them for a good cause. Yu Ji, the Imperial Guards need you, you should go back, said Duan Wuya to Yu Ji. Yu Ji slightly nodded and took leave. Immediately after, he left the pavilion. Nan Shan, while looking at Yu Ji's silhouette leave, said, Your Highness, congratulations on gaining the Imperial Guards. Duan Wuya shook his head and said, Today's greatest achievement is not the Imperial Guards. Duan Tianlang, Meng Han and the others didn't care about Your Highness and worked against Your Highness. Meng Han is already dead, Duan Tianlang is mourning over his son's death, the others should be perfectly aware of the situation as well, said Nan Shan. Duan Wuya was usually always so kind and soft. Because of that, many people forgot that he was also extremely powerful. Nan Shan had been following Duan Wuya for many years, he perfectly understood that the people who underestimated Duan Wuya would end up in tragic situations. Even the extremely strong, powerful, ruthless and cruel high official, the Crown Prince, didn't dare look down on his brother. That's not how it is, said Duan Wuya while shaking his head. Nan Shan was a bit surprised and immediately said, Lin Feng. Indeed, that's Lin Feng. Duan Wuya, while slightly nodding his head, said, Everybody now knows that Lin Feng is one from my faction. Even though the Imperial Guards protect the city and constitute an important provision of force, in comparison with these troops, they are still too weak. These troops are my goal. Duan Tianlang is too arrogant and looks down on everyone else, he's a moron. Surprisingly, he dared touch Duan Xie, he doesn't know, but from that moment, he doomed himself. He still thinks that there is a chance with my brother, but he's nothing but a dead man. Duan Wuya, at that moment, didn't look like a friendly person. His eyes were filled with sharpness, brutality, and coldness. He hadn't been worried about Duan Xie being kidnapped by MOU troops, they wouldn't have killed Duan Xie, but he hadn't thought that Duan Tianlang would try to kill Lin Feng and Duan Xie on the way back. Nan Shan could sense Duan Wuya's coldness. He knew that if Duan Tianlang was still alive, but it was only a matter of time. What Duan Tianlang didn't understand was that he wouldn't be able to achieve his aim if the princess died, he would be doomed. No matter the winner, Duan Wudao or Duan Wuya, Dan Tianlang would have been killed for murdering Duan Xie. Duan Tianlang still thought that Duan Wudao would agree with him killing the princess. Maybe if Duan Tianlang had the princess blood on his hands, Duan Wudao wouldn't say anything initially, but in the end, he would end up like everyone else who had committed a serious crime. Such things were typical in political affairs. They were doing things behind the curtains, in secret, and things were difficult to understand. It was difficult to see where each piece was placed on the board. Nan Shan, you tell me, how can I get these troops, said Duan Wuya. Nan Shan was surprised, shook his head and said, I don't know. Nan Shan knew what Duan Wuya meant, the most mysterious army of Shuiyu, the Snow Dragon Guards. The Snow Dragon Guard unit was composed of the best cultivators within Shuiyu. It is absolutely normal for you not to know, said Duan Wuya while smiling, the old man will, sooner or later, stop reigning over the country, allowing my brother and me to struggle for power and influence. Leading the ministers and so on will not be a problem, but the one who manages to obtain the Snow Dragon troops, will be the real emperor. Nan Shan remained silent. He didn't know much about the Snow Dragon troops apart from the fact that they were extremely strong. At that moment, Duan Wuya raised his head and gazed into the distance. Your Highness, I will leave now, said Nan Shan while getting up, but Duan Wuya shook his head and said, no need, stay here. In the distance, Lin Feng had appeared. He was slowly and silently walking towards the pavilion, like a leaf floating on the wind, as if he was in perfect fusion with the earth. The energy which was emerging from his body was mysterious. Duan Wuya was a bit surprised. What is Lin Feng's cultivation level now? Thought Duan Wuya. Duan Wuya couldn't sense Lin Feng's cultivation level, but it seemed like since he had gone to Duanren City, he had changed a lot. Your Highness, said Lin Feng, who had arrived at the pavilion a moment later. Duan Wuya nodded. Lin Feng, hurry up and sit down, said Duan Wuya looking friendly again. He once again looked easy to get along with. He seemed to be a warm and soft person. Lin Feng slightly nodded and sat down opposite Nan Shan. This time, when Lin Feng entered into the forest, he didn't feel strange at all. It was obviously thanks to Duan Wuya. Your Highness, you asked me to personally come to the lovesick forest. What do you need to speak to me about? Asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng, you don't need to be so meticulous with me. Above all, I invited you to show you my gratitude for having brought Duan Xie back safely. Duan Wuya poured some alcohol into Lin Feng's glass and immediately downed his glass. Lin Feng grabbed the glass of alcohol and brought it to his lips. While drinking, he said in a low voice, Your Highness, the princess was missing, it was my duty to bring her back. Lin Feng continued drinking the lovesick alcohol and a mysterious feeling invaded his heart. How's the feeling? Asked Duan Wuya while smiling. Even though I can't appreciate alcohol that much, I know that lovesick alcohol is unique and original, replied Lin Feng while smiling. What I want to ask you is if Xie appeared in your heart while drinking lovesickness, said Duan Wuya with a smile yet not a smile on his face. Lin Feng, it seems that you do not have the same feelings as my sister. Lin Feng was a bit shocked and then smiled wryly. That alcohol was supposed to make a person's most loved one appear in one's heart. In Lin Feng's heart, except for the image of a pure and holy silhouette wearing long white clothes, there was also a small part which belonged to the princess. He remembered that day at the Z government, Duan Xie had really moved him to the extent that her silhouette appeared in his mind. Besides, in his heart, there was another girl, wearing red clothes. She was gentle and demure. Lin Feng was a bit perplexed. He believed in true love. All right, this also none of my business. Lin Feng, I officially granted you a title, you can now officially claim it. You can also go to Yangzhou City to get your fief. When Duan Wuya saw that Lin Feng remained silent, he also didn't insist, he instead changed the subject. At the end of the year, soon the annual New Year's holiday will be upon us. I will go back at that moment, replied Lin Feng. He and his father had been expelled out of the Lin clan, so it was better to wait for a complete year to be over before returning. Maybe he would be able to arrive for the Lin clan annual meeting too. Alright, in a few days I will send people to the Celestial Academy to come and pick you up to officially to receive your title, said Duan Wuya. Alright, said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. Your Highness, I would like to ask you for help. I need your connections to help me find someone. Tell me who, said Duan Wuya while nodding. My father, Lin Hai, said Lin Feng slowly. Lin Hai said that he was going to the Imperial City, but many things had happened to Lin Feng and he didn't even know where his father was. Lin Feng had no news, so he hoped that Duan Wuya would be able to help him as the city was extremely large. Your father, Lin Hai, said Duan Wuya looking pensive, and then immediately nodded and said, All right, Lin Feng, leave it to me. Your Highness, thank you, said Lin Feng while nodding and saluting Duan Wuya with a cupped hand salute. If you, Your Highness, don't have anything else to add, I will take my leave. All right, you can go, said Duan Wuya while nodding and not preventing Lin Feng from leaving. Lin Feng abruptly left the lovesick forest. Outside of the lovesick forest, there was a pure and holy-looking silhouette waiting for him. When Lin Feng came out, they left together. In that fourth cultivation tower, the pure Qi was also the thickest. It was the best tower for practicing cultivation. Besides, anybody could practice in that cultivation tower. Of course, the rule was always the same, one had to be strong enough to obtain a room. At that moment, at the tower, there were some people looking up at the majestic cultivation tower, their eyes were filled with impatience. Not all of them had the power to enter it, they were just admiring it. Yunxi was a new student at the Celestial Academy, she had broken through to the second Ling Qi layer, which was not bad at all considering that she was only 17, but at the Celestial Academy, that was nothing extraordinary. If only one day I could go into that cultivation tower and practice on the top floor, it would be great, said Yunxi while looking up at the tall tower. That tower was different from the three others. The pure qi was flowing against the current. At the top of the tower, pure qi was denser than at the bottom. Besides, in that tower, rooms didn't require additional purity stones depending on the floor, and by standing at the bottom, it was possible to see which rooms on which floor were available. Only one glance sufficed. Once someone was in a room, the door closed itself and the pure qi started to circulate. Everybody could see from outside whether there was a free room or not. Each floor only had a single room. That cultivation tower was very special though, it was in the middle of all the other towers and was only used by extremely powerful cultivators. Many people, like Yunxi, were only there to admire it. They all hoped that they would be able to practice cultivation in that tower someday. Yunxi, stop dreaming, joked a girl wearing blue clothes next to her. You should become the girlfriend of one of them and then he would take you inside. Yunxi, last time, didn't Du Gushang show that he was interested in you? You could go with him, said the other girl immediately. She sounded like she was joking in a jealous tone. Du Gushang was one of the 10 ranked disciples of the Celestial Academy, he was ranked 4th. In her thoughts appeared a noble young man. Yunxi shook her head and said, there is someone I like more than Du Gushang, it's Lin Feng. Lin Feng, the girl in blue clothes, was stupefied. She looked at the top of the tower and said, I heard that Lin Feng battled against He Mo last time and that he was extremely strong. Now he is known for his meritorious service during the war, he burnt an entire enemy army of hundreds of thousands alive. It's hard to imagine. He seems to be such a handsome and delicate young man, yet he is so daring and courageous. Besides, he seems he is about the same age as us. Yes, he is now a Marquis and owns a city. I heard that he came back to the Celestial Academy. Yunxi had a soft smile on her face. She remembered that day, when Lin Feng battled against He Mo. She would never forget him. The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. The silhouette that Yunxi saw in front of her looked conceited, filled with arrogance, the arrogance of the aristocracy. Du Gushang was a rich and powerful person. Du Gushang had heard about Lin Feng's achievements, people were talking about him everywhere. He had even just heard that people were comparing him with Lin Feng. Surprisingly, there were people who dared say that Lin Feng was better than him, like Yunxi. Du Gushang was in a bad mood because of that. What kind of person did this girl think he was? In the entire Celestial Academy, he was always practicing at the top of that tower, nobody dared to take his position, even the second in the ranking, Qiong Bai Luo, and the third Wen Ao Shui. Du Gushang thought that because they had never had conflicts, he was different and better than them. He respected Lin Feng even less. For him, comparing him with Lin Feng was a humiliation. Why couldn't I compare you with Lin Feng? As I see it, Lin Feng is better than you, said Yunxi when she heard that Du Gushang was criticizing Lin Feng, which made Du Gushang furious. Shut the hell up, he shouted. Smack. At that moment, a loud sound filled the air. Yunxi had been slapped in the face, not by Du Gushang but by one of the girls who was with her. Yunxi, you shut the hell up. Du Gushang is much better than Lin Feng. In front of Du Gushang, Lin Feng is mere trash, a nobody, said the girl extremely coldly. Her words and actions were harsh. When Du Gushang saw that, a big arrogant smile appeared on his face. Indeed, in front of him, Lin Feng was a nobody. At that moment, about 100 meters away from them, a handsome silhouette had appeared. They raised their head and looked at the tall and majestic tower. That young man was precisely the one they were discussing, Lin Feng. Lin Feng then slowly turned his head and looked at Du Gushang and the others. He wanted to go to the cultivation tower and practice there until the end of the year, then he would go back to Yangzhou City, but at that moment, on the road, many people were talking about him. Even at the bottom of the tower, some people were arguing about him. Lin Feng heard every word already, but he couldn't be bothered with them. He didn't feel like going and proving anything to them. They were not worth his time. Many people were talking about him. He couldn't care about everyone. Nature would take its course. But at that moment, a girl was protecting his reputation and had been slapped in the face for defending him. She was being humiliated. Lin Feng frowned. Yunxi, tonight, I will sleep with you. After that, we won't talk of this again and I will not punish you, said Du Gushang, sounding extremely arrogant. How ridiculous. It was difficult for him to get a woman with his ugly face. He was interested in Yunxi, but if he had said it clearly, it would have been giving her face, but she surprisingly dared say that she found Lin Feng better than him, therefore, he would teach her the power of a noble over the course of the night. Yunxi was stupefied. She was looking at that ugly and disgusting guy who wanted to take advantage of her. It would rather be an honor and a favor for her to sleep with him. What a shameless young man. He thought that he could freely humiliate those beneath him. In fact, it was really that way. Du Gushang really thought he could humiliate anyone as he wished, except for a few exceptions. If you don't reply, I will just help myself, said Du Gushang with a particularly evil smile on his face. Yunxi's facial expression changed again. She turned deathly pale. What a disgusting and hideous man. However, she also felt powerless. Not only did he have a very high status, but he had also broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. Relying on his cultivation level and physical strength, he could easily capture her by force and use her as his toy. Yunxi, Du Gushang is giving you a great opportunity. You are lucky. You'd be really shameless if you made him lose face, said the mean girl, trying to flatter Du Gushang at the same time. Yunxi looked even paler. Being sexually assaulted by Du Gushang for an entire night and then abandoned was a stroke of luck? The mean girl was shameless. You're so young and already so cheap, you are one promiscuous flower, said a voice interrupting them. It sounded cold and detached. It shocked the mean girl. She turned around and immediately saw a handsome young man. She frowned and said, "Who are you talking to?" Last time, she hadn't seen He Mo and Lin Feng's battle, so she couldn't recognize him. Apart from you, is there another cheap and trashy girl here? Asked Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. With those kind of girls, the only solution was to be harsher than them. The mean girl was stupefied, but Yunxi suddenly seemed happy. She was blankly staring at the young man in front of her. It was Lin Feng. Surprisingly, it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng had heard her and come to her rescue. As before, he looked natural and unrestrained, but in comparison with before, he looked more mysterious and had a heroic spirit. Du Gushang frowned as well. He didn't recognize Lin Feng either. Last time, during the battle between He Mo and Lin Feng, even though almost everybody had seen it, Du Gushang despised He Mo, so he didn't go to watch his battle. Why don't you mind your own business? Said Du Gushang, who looked like he was in a joking mood. Lin Feng coldly looked at Du Gushang. Immediately after, he shook his head in disdain. That guy didn't know him yet. He was talking behind his back. Lin Feng despised these types of filthy people and attached no importance to them. Lin Feng looked at the mean girl and said, I understand that for you, a one-night stand with anyone is a stroke of luck, and since it is about giving face, it's clear that you have given a great deal of face and so you are very lucky. Lin Feng was speaking loudly and clearly so that everybody could hear. Then, everybody looked at her and laughed. What she said was indeed utterly ridiculous. She was really shameless. I'm talking to you, said Du Gushang, whose voice was sounding colder and colder. Lin Feng surprisingly wasn't paying attention to him. Du Gushang had a prestigious social status, how could Lin Feng ignore him in front of everybody? Lin Feng slowly turned around and said to Du Gushang, "Do I know you?" Du Gushang was astonished and then smiled coldly, Of course, don't know you, so you most likely don't know me either. People who know me don't dare ignore me. What's your name?" "You overestimate yourself," said Lin Feng while smiling, and continued, "Even though I don't know you, I unfortunately heard your unsavory name, which is normal considering the you show off in front of everybody, Du Gushang." "Huh?" Du Gushang narrowed his eyes. Lin Feng surprisingly knew who he was but still dared act that way towards him. "Since you know who I am, I will show you my methods. Slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times, once you're done, I will forgive all of your mistakes from today." Du Gushang sounded cold and was releasing oppressing energy. His mouth was filled with endless arrogance and coldness. He thought that releasing a little bit of chi and force would be enough to make Lin Feng collapse. However, Lin Feng was calmly standing there, motionless, with a cold smile on his face. His facial expression hadn't changed at all. It actually seemed like Lin Feng hadn't sensed the oppressive energy at all. "Slap my own face. Kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times. Lin Feng raised his head and slowly walked towards Du Gushang. Du Gushang was surprised and released more and more of his chi. "With so little chi and force, don't you think that you're making a fool of yourself?" said Lin Feng, making the whole crowd look on while astonished. What an insane guy, humiliating Du Gushang. Besides, Lin Feng was a military student, so his fellow military students were all excited, especially since Du Gushang was a political student. "You can only talk big," said Du Gushang, who released an even stronger energy which pressures the entire atmosphere. Around Lin Feng's body appeared sword chi. It was extremely powerful, his entire body was like a sword, extremely sharp. The crowd was astonished. Their hearts were pounding. These energies were terrifying. Was this the same Lin Feng who had fought against Hamo? Du Gushang also started shaking violently, he was stupefied by Lin Feng. Du Gushang also started shaking violently, he was stupefied by Lin Feng. How is this possible? How could you be so strong? Du Gushang couldn't believe it his eyes. He had never seen Lin Feng. Besides, he was so young. At that moment, he was releasing sword energy, the energy looked extremely solid and thick. At the academy, there wasn't such a strong student. While Du Gushang's heart was pounding, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. The earth fusion wasn't only embodied by Lin Feng's swordplay. It also affected Lin Feng's speed, he had broken through to a special cultivation dimension. Since he was in perfect symbiosis with the earth, he could move using the power of the earth. Whap! Du Gushang's body was blown away. A large red mark appeared on his face, the mark was from an open hand slap. The crowd was stupefied. How scary! He was a cultivator of the 8th Ling Chi layer and he was also ranked 4th amongst the top disciples of the academy. Surprisingly, he couldn't withstand a single slap from Lin Feng and was sent flying. The mean girl was also astonished. Her mouth was wide open. She looked as if she had seen something absolutely extraordinary. Du Gushang, who was extremely powerful and influential, had been slapped in the face by a young man. Who was he? Yunxi looked happy and amazed, Lin Feng was so frivolous and unruly. The view of Du Gushang getting slapped was even more shocking than seeing Hamo being defeated. Alright. He deserves to be one of the military students. These students in governmental affairs can only talk big, but in reality, they cannot withstand a single blow, said the people in the crowd. As expected, many people couldn't stand Du Gushang. Du Gushang's facial expression was terrifying, he looked like an injured animal. He was looking at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way and said, "Who are you?" Me, said Lin Feng while pointing at himself, and then immediately said, sounding cold and detached, I am a nobody, I cannot rival you, said Lin Feng in the tone of a joke. Yunxi giggled, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. If Lin Feng was a nobody, what was Du Gushang? A nobody? For a moment, Du Gushang didn't understand, then he heard some people laugh who were saying, how ridiculous, he was making fun of him, saying that he couldn't rival with him, but now that he's facing him, he got slapped silly and cannot even withstand a single blow. If I were him, I wouldn't in the Imperial City, I would get the hell out of here and run as far as I could go. When Du Gushang heard that person making fun of him, a hideous expression appeared on his face. Lin Feng. He finally understood thanks to that person who was making fun of him. The one who had just slapped him was Lin Feng. He had just said that Lin Feng couldn't rival him. At that moment, the mean girl was shaking. Lin Feng, that was Lin Feng. Actually, he was much stronger than Du Gushang. You will regret what you did today, threatened Du Gushang, sounding cold and detached. Immediately after, he turned around and started leaving. He had been humiliated, he couldn't stay there. Wait, said Lin Feng in a cold tone. Du Gushang thus stopped and slowly turned around. He then looked at Lin Feng in a cold way. Are you thinking of leaving like that? Said Lin Feng as if he was amused. What do you want? Said Du Gushang, who was surprised. Would Lin Feng dare to continue? A moment ago, you wanted me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of you. Now, you found out that you are much weaker than me, do you think that you can leave that easily? Lin Feng made it sound like he had no choice but to follow Du Gushang's lead and continued, what kind of person do you think I am? When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they got excited. They wanted to see what Lin Feng would do to Du Gushang. Show me how it is done, slap your own face, kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times in front of me, said Lin Feng, sounding imposing, domineering, and whose voice was even colder. His smile had disappeared, and his tone had become sharp, like his sword. You want me to slap my own face, kneel 3 times, and kowtow 9 times in front of you, said Du Gushang, who couldn't believe it, Lin Feng dared request such a thing from him. It seems that when I speak, people like you think they can ignore me, therefore I will have to do it myself, said Lin Feng in a low voice. Suddenly, he rushed forward like a madman, his silhouette vanished in a flash, without hesitation, he unleashed an attack. Du Gushang's heart was pounding, how fast was Lin Feng? In a flash, Lin Feng had arrived in front of him and Lin Feng's finger was pointing at him. The tip of his finger was filled with sword chi and it suddenly rushed towards Du Gushang at incredible speed. Hastily, Du Gushang raised his fist to block the attack, but suddenly, a long and horrible shriek filled the air. Du Gushang's face suddenly turned deathly pale. His fist had been impaled by Lin Feng's finger. Whap! Lin Feng slapped Du Gushang once more and the sound echoed through the atmosphere. Whap! 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 Lin Feng was unceasingly slapping Du Gushang's face, the crowd was watching, blankly staring at that scene. Du Gushang's arrogant face was going through a thorough beating and his heart was filling with coldness. Du Gushang had been ignorant. Lin Feng was playing with him as if he was a toy. Lin Feng was violently slapping his face in front of everyone. Since I have to do it myself, there is an extra fee included. When Lin Feng stopped talking, 2 loud sounds successively filled the atmosphere. Du Gushang was kneeling down and crawling on the ground and kowtowing in front of Lin Feng. He was extremely proud and usually so arrogant, this was a huge humiliation for him. His heart was pounding and he was sweating cold sweat. What a cruel guy. If I am a nobody who cannot rival you, what are you doing kneeling down and kowtowing me, said Lin Feng in a disdainful way while glaring at Du Gushang who was crawling on the ground. Du Gushang had just broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, when facing a cultivator in the Earth fusion dimension, he basically couldn't withstand a single finger. Lin Feng had already fought against cultivators of the Xian Qi layer and nearly killed one. Du Gushang lowered his head, his heart was filled with endless hatred and wrath. A moment later, a foot pressed against his lower jaw and he heard Lin Feng's cold voice. "Get lost." Lin Feng only said these two words and Du Gushang's body was sent flying away. Lin Feng didn't look at him anymore, he then turned to Yun Shi, warmly smiled at her and said, "If you want me to take care of her, I'll immediately handle her." By her, Lin Feng obviously meant the mean girl. At that moment, the mean girl was shaking and her heart was pounding. Yun Shi just said, in a cold and detached way, in the tone of a joke, "It's best not to touch such filthy people." "Alright, forget it then, I don't like touching them either," said Lin Feng while laughing softly. Immediately after, he pointed at the 5th room of Cultivation Tower. It was empty, it was the place Du Gushang had seized. "You want to go into the Cultivation Tower?" Yun Shi shivered, she looked at Lin Feng and said in a soft voice, "I cannot go in." "I'll help you," said Lin Feng while smiling. He grabbed her hand and started walking. Immediately after, Lin Feng jumped into the air. Yun Shi was having a panic attack, she closed her eyes in fear and she could barely open them, she realized that she was high in the air and flying, her heart was pounding from fear of falling. Then, she looked at the handsome young man on her side and her heart was filled with endless softness and tenderness. What an amazing agility technique, thought the crowd when they saw Lin Feng and the girl. He was high up in the air, how powerful. When he arrived high in the air, Lin Feng stood on the energy from the atmosphere and started walking on the invisible force. Lin Feng and Yun Shi shot across the sky like an arrow and landed on the 5th room of the Cultivation Tower, which was a few hundred meters in the air. When Yun Shi saw the small silhouettes on the ground beneath the tower, she had the impression she was in a dream and nothing was real. "Train hard," said Lin Feng while smiling at Yun Shi. Immediately after, he moved again and was immediately on the 3rd room. He immediately entered in a room. There was nobody in the 3rd room either. It belonged to the death god Wen Ao Shui. Lin Feng obviously could use the room if he pleased. If there had been nobody in the other rooms, he would have gone there as well, regardless of who they belonged to. Concerning Yun Shi, when she saw Lin Feng move away, her dream to practice in that cultivation tower had become reality, but she wasn't excited. In her heart, she felt like she had lost something. Everything was like a dream, but that natural, unrestrained, and frivolous young man was just a passerby. He was so outstanding that she would only be able to look up at him in the sky, spreading his wings and flying away. What Yun Shi didn't know was that, at that moment, the two girls with whom she had come with were still down on the ground and were jealous of her. They envied her because having the opportunity to practice in that tower was something that they were all yearning for. Concerning the mean girl, at that moment, her heart was filled with regret. The people in the crowd had different facial expressions. Lin Feng seemed to be a person that nobody could prevent from moving forwards. At that moment, nothing of what had happened was present in Lin Feng's heart. At that moment, in his heart and thoughts, there were only 3 things, the strong cultivator's memories that were separated into 3 parts. They were all extremely powerful. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.